Chapter 1982. That clear voice in Jing Yanyan's ears was like an ice blade, piercing her eardrums. Jing Yanyan staggered back a few steps, her eyes staring at Yiqing Luo without blinking, her heart tightened into a ball. The young lady floated in midair, a head of fine hair, scattered on her shoulders, swaying with the wind. She was like a fairy from the ninth heaven, shrouded in dazzling brilliance, looking down on all living beings. Every smile and frown seemed to be brilliant, making one unable to blaspheme. That was the power of a divine relic? Jing Yanyan was filled with shock. Yiqing Luo looked down at Jing Yanyan, seeing the greed and fear in her eyes, her lips curled into a sweet smile. Those who offend me, I will kill them at the ends of the earth. She threw the glower flame fan into the air. The glower flame fan rotated rapidly in midair and suddenly opened up. Like a ball of tiny flame with a whoosh, it burned into a raging flame. Yiqing Luo's figure swayed, her slender white hand raised up, steadily catching the glower flame fan. Soon after, a wind blade that was like thousands of giant waves was fiercely slashed out. Yiqing Luo's body was also surrounded by a circle of vortex qi. One circle after another, incomparably powerful, and all the other auras in the surroundings were isolated. Jing Yanyan quickly wielded her long sword, stirring up numerous waves. The sword momentum was fierce, not willing to fall behind, facing the wind blade released by Yiqing Luo, slashing down horizontally. Immediately her sword move changed, she was already close to Yiqing Luo, the long sword pointed straight at Yiqing Luo's eyebrows. Yiqing Luo's lips revealed a smirk of evil cold arc, slightly squinted long eyes, flashing with an interesting luster. She didn't dodge but stared fixedly at the long sword pointing at her eyebrows without blinking. Yiqing Luo's confidence made Jing Yanyan's heart unknowingly rise up a sense of fear. The long sword that was brandished also lost some of its momentum. This couldn't be another new trick of Yiqing Luo's? Jing Yanyan originally had absolute confidence. Her sword momentum, Yiqing Luo absolutely had no way to avoid, and could only choose to forcibly resist. And she was also prepared to make a move on Yiqing Luo while Yiqing Luo was resisting. No matter what, he could not allow Yiqing Luo to use the power of the divine relic. Otherwise she would definitely be no match for a divine artifact. But Yiqing Luo's complacent look really made Jing Yanyan's heart beat like a drum. Jing Yanyan looked at Yiqing Luo suspiciously, trying to find a clue from her expression. But when Jing Yanyan met with Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze, his heart exploded like a volcano erupting. Jing Yanyan's gaze turned cold. Her wrist moved and she gripped the bright light sword tightly. "You're deliberately mystifying things to scare me?" She scoffed coldly, her gaze sharp as a blade. "I've never been afraid of anything. A little girl like you wants to scare this sect leader?" As she spoke, Jing Yanyan's own profound strength soared extremely violently. It was as if he had gathered all his dark force on the sword. The vast and boundless sword force was like a hot knife cutting through butter, directly charging towards Yiqing Luo's glabella, stabbing towards it forcefully. The surrounding commoners had been paying attention to the battle in the field. When they saw Yiqing Luo about to be stabbed by Jing Yanyan's long sword, they all cried out in shock. There were quite a number of commoners who were anxious to rush up the stage to help Yiqing Luo block this sword. However, then a scene that astonished everyone happened. Just as the bright light sword was about a fist's distance away from Yiqing Luo's glabella, suddenly bright light sword's strong charge seemed to have met with some obstruction as it came to a halt. Star. Chapter 1983. Jing Yanyan's expression congealed. She clenched her teeth and used all her strength to stab forward. But there seemed to be a membrane in the air. No matter how hard Jing Yanyan tried, the scenic light sword didn't budge at all. It couldn't get close to Yiqing Luo at all. How was that possible? Yiqing Luo's surroundings didn't have any enchantment, so how could the scenic light sword not hurt her? Jing Yanyan's eyes were filled with astonishment as she couldn't figure it out. Yiqing Luo was all smiles, her eyes curved as she looked at Jing Yanyan, who was close at hand. "Sect Master Shijing, it's a good thing not to be afraid this way. It's interesting when I play with my prey, isn't it?" "No, impossible. What sorcery did you use?" Jing Yanyan's chest heaved up and down violently. When she met Yiqing Luo's smiling eyes, she instinctively wanted to retreat. But Jing Yanyan's hand, which was holding the long sword, had yet to withdraw. Suddenly she saw Yiqing Luo's body, shooting out a ray of red light. Like an avalanche, it rushed towards the scenic light sword which was pointed between her eyebrows. Kacha. There was a crisp sound of something breaking. The scenic light sword in Jing Yanyan's hand broke into two. The broken blade fell down, landing on the ruins of the gravel. Jing Yanyan's pupils suddenly constricted. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at the sword in her hand, which was left with half a long sword. Her petite body was trembling slightly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Broken? Her scenic light sword broke. 10 Scenery sect treasure broken? This was the inherited sword of every sect master of 10 Scenery sect. Today it was broken in her hands. No. Impossible. How could the sect treasure be broken? This must be Yi Qing Luo's sorcery. Jing Yanyan's eyes immediately turned red. She stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo, her murderous intent burst out. Slut. It's your sorcery trying to deceive my eyes. Quickly hand over the scenic light sword. Hand over the scenic light sword. Her hand, which was holding the scenic light sword, kept trembling. Her entire body stiffened, showing a state of madness. How could the sect treasure of 10 Scenery sect be broken? Even if it was a divine weapon, it wouldn't be broken. There was no way it would break. Jing Yanyan fiercely pounced towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Her sharp shriek was extremely ear-piercing. Slut. Hand over the bright light sword. Hand it over. However, before Jing Yanyan could get close, an invisible stream of air bounced her off the ground. Jing Yanyan tumbled down from the air and landed on the ground. That was profound energy. The flow of profound qi encircled Yi Qing Luo's body. It formed a protective shield for Yi Qing Luo. Earlier, scenic light sword was unable to get close to Yi Qing Luo because it was obstructed by this protective shield. She was just a 15-year-old girl. How could she possibly possess such a powerful flow of profound energy? Even if he borrowed the power of a divine artifact. Even so, it was impossible to raise her profound rank. Jing Yanyan's eyes were filled with terror as she stared unblinkingly at Yi Qing Luo's smiling face. Wait a minute, Mystic Class. Yes, Mystic Class. From the beginning to the end, she had not been able to see through Yi Qing Luo's profound grade. The thoughts he got from Yi Qing Qian. Jing Yanyan had always thought that Yi Qing Luo was at most Earth profound 5th grade. And the reason why Yi Qing Luo was able to exchange so many blows with her was because she had many magical weapons. The Overlord gifted her the Glower Flame Fan, and Yi Qing Luo herself was an alchemist and so on. But she had never thought deeply about what level Yi Qing Luo's profound grade was at. Chapter 1984. As the sect master of 10 Views, she had the best resources since childhood. At the age of 60, she had finally stepped into the Sky Mystic realm and became a Sky Mystic Supremacy. Because she was a Sky Mystic Supremacy. For many years, no one dared to find trouble with 10 Views. And it had been sitting steadily on the throne of the #1 sect. But now, she had suffered such a big loss in the hands of a 15-year-old girl. How could this girl be a Earth Mystic 5th grade cultivator? Could it be that Yi Qing Luo was also a Sky Mystic Supremacy? No. Absolutely impossible. A 15-year-old Sky Mystic Supremacy? Who would believe it? Even the Overlord couldn't possibly reach the Sky Mystic realm at the age of 15, right? Jing Yanyan couldn't believe it as she propped herself up on the ground and stared at the girl in midair. She would rather believe that the reason why Yi Qing Luo could possess such great power was because of the divine weapon. She absolutely wouldn't believe that Yi Qing Luo was a Sky Mystic Supremacy. Sect Master 10 Views, the brilliant light sword has been broken. If you still insist on going about things the wrong way, don't blame me for not knowing how to respect the elderly. Yi Qing Luo raised her pink lips. Under the glow of the Glower Flame Fan, her charming eyes were covered with a layer of fiery red glow, adding some flirtatious and bewitching charm to her stunning looks. Elderly. These 3 words stung Jing Yanyan's ears. Which woman didn't want to be talked about the problem of appearance and age? Even Jing Yanyan, who had always dressed like a Taoist nun, attached great importance to her appearance. Otherwise, she wouldn't have specially used profound energy to maintain her appearance as a 30 or 40-year-old woman. If it wasn't because she was the sect master, she had to be older in order to convince the masses. Otherwise, Jing Yanyan would definitely maintain her appearance as a 17 or 18-year-old. Arrogant silly girl, don't you dare be arrogant. Jing Yanyan clenched her teeth as she gripped the sword hilt in her hand and attacked Yi Qing Luo relentlessly. The broken brilliant light sword was like a dead object. No matter how Jing Yanyan released her profound energy, the brilliant light sword had no reaction at all. Jing Yanyan's fingers clenched tightly as her red eyes stared at the sword hilt in her hand. Even now she still could not accept it. Her scenic light sword had really been broken by Yi Qing Luo's profound qi airflow. Jing Yanyan no longer had any thoughts to attack Yi Qing Luo. Hugging half of the scenic light sword, she half knelt on the ground and let out a heart-wrenching roar. The scenic light sword represented the lifeline of the 10 sceneries. Now that the scenic light sword had been destroyed, she had become the sinner of the 10 sceneries. How could Jing Yanyan's heart calm down? Girl, take advantage of this opportunity to take down the 10 scenery sect master. Old Man Song transmitted his thoughts in his mind. Yiqing Luo half squinted her eyes as she gazed at the woman who was howling hoarsely. Her eyes were as calm as still water. As for Jing Yanyan's heart-wrenching, he did not feel anything at all. Hearing Old Man Song's words, her eyelashes fluttered. You still haven't obtained the calming bead. The power of the divine artifact won't be able to last for too long. You have to end this quickly. Old Man Song saw that Yiqing Luo still had no reaction as he advised in a deep voice. After dealing with the 10 scenery sect master, you still have to deal with the dark forces, so don't waste your energy in vain. Yiqing Luo nodded slightly. I know. Yes, she couldn't sustain the power of the divine artifact for too long. Because of this, the profound jade heart would faintly riot. If it wasn't for the jade pendant which Dmo Xian found for her, which suppressed the agitation of the profound jade heart, she would probably have been devoured by the profound jade heart by now. Chapter 1985. The only way to deal with Jing Yanyan was to start with the scenic light sword. Because of this, Yiqing Luo exhausted the power of the divine relic and broke the scenic light sword. Exhausting the power of the divine relic was equivalent to exhausting Yiqing Luo's own profound energy. Breaking the scenic light sword almost exhausted half of Yiqing Luo's power. The current Yiqing Luo, with the power of the divine relic, could not hold on for too long. If she did not end the battle quickly, the pendant on her neck would forcibly suppress the power of her profound jade heart. Once the power of the profound jade heart was suppressed, the power of the divine relic would also diminish. Before this, what she needed to do was not only to settle Jing Yanyan, but also the dark forces. She must win this battle. Otherwise, the West Continent would be destroyed. Three Springs Sect would also completely become a traitor party. Three Springs Sect was Yi Fengyu's. She had promised Yi Fengyu that she would hand the Three Springs Sect over to him. She must not destroy Three Springs Sect. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned cold. Powerful profound energy lingered around her body. Streams of air turned into a huge whirlpool, as if it could swallow everything in the world. Sect Master Shijing, take your laughable scenic light sword and scram back to Shijing's sect. Yiqing Luo reprimanded and immediately opened the glower flame fan, spewing out a thick and majestic profound chi. The profound chi in midair turned into a light arc. In a split second, the surrounding air seemed to distort. A wave overshadowed the sound, shaking the heavens and earth. The entire West Billow Square was plunged into the quaking of the earth and mountains. This was the power of the divine relic? This kind of terrifying and majestic profound chi. This kind of profound chi was enough to shock people. This was the power of the divine relic? Too terrifying, even if it was separated by the barrier of the Mu family. All of them could clearly feel the surging waves of air that came one after another. The entire square, both armies, were shocked by the profound chi that Yiqing Luo released at this moment. Jing Yanyan was still half kneeling on the ground, hearing Yiqing Luo's insolent rebuke. Her brows suddenly turned fierce. Clenching her fists tightly, her heart was filled with hatred towards Yiqing Luo. However, the hatred in her eyes had just covered her eyes. A powerful profound chi whizzed over. Jing Yanyan's pupils constricted, and she wanted to retreat. But her reaction was already too late. Bang! Majestic profound chi fell. The entire ground cracked into rubble and flew in all directions. Dust billowed, and everything was filled with a bloodthirsty and cold aura. Dead? Miss Yi's sect leader Shijing, she's dead, right? I knew Miss Yi was the best. Long live Miss Yi. Long live Miss Yi. When the onlookers saw this, a look of joy appeared on their faces. As long as Yiqing Luo settled the 10 scenic sect master, the underground forces would lose a capable assistant. Yiqing Luo then joined the royal army. The dark forces would not be able to fight back. Just as everyone seemed to have seen a ray of hope, Yiqing Luo squinted her charming eyes, as she fixed her gaze on the direction where the smoke and dust were curling upwards. She frowned, her voice cold. Yi Fengru? My good second brother, could it be that because of your love for Zi Chanshan, you have already fallen in love with this old woman? Everyone was taken aback. Following that, their eyes widened as they looked at that patch of smoke in disbelief. The smoke slowly dispersed, only to see Jing Yanyan lying on the ground, covered in blood. Blood had dyed her plain-colored long robe red, and below her was a river of blood. But Jing Yanyan was not dead yet. Her expression was sinister, as her features were distorted due to the pain. Standing in front of Jing Yanyan, the refined man holding the long sword had one hand behind his back, while the other was pointing towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Star. Chapter 1986. The man's sleeves fluttered, his white long robe was not stained by the blood rain. His expression was calm, as gentle as jade. His elegance was just like his name. There wasn't any sense of incompatibility. His black and white eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. His voice was calm. Seventh sister, as a member of the Three Springs sect, you should advance and retreat together with the Three Springs sect. But today, because of your own ambition, you went against the Three Springs sect. Not only did you become a traitor of the Three Springs sect, you even assisted the rebels to seize the imperial power. You have thrown the Three Springs sect's face. He enunciated each word with great force. His tone was filled with deep regret. Yiqing Luo was about to laugh at his shamelessness. This was the first time she saw Yi Fengru spouting nonsense in a serious manner. It was a novelty. She giggled as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Second brother's ability to lie through your teeth is really strong. The commoners were filled with righteous indignation as they echoed Yiqing Luo's words. Did he need to be so shameless? Didn't he want his face anymore? And the traitor of Three Springs sect? And the traitor? And throwing the Three Springs sect's face? You're obviously the one who threw the Three Springs sect's face, and even tarnished Three Springs sect's reputation as one of the four major sects. The real traitor was this so-called second young master of Three Springs sect. The real traitor was this so-called second young master of Three Springs sect. Was he bullying them for not being educated? Even if they hadn't been educated, they still understood the most basic etiquette and shame. Yi Fengru's long sword moved as he stared at Yiqing Luo and struck directly. Seventh sister, since you're so stubborn, then I can only put justice before family. His sword moves were not like Jing Yanyan's. His sword moves were without any fancy moves, completely aimed at the vital points. This kind of attack was fast and accurate. If it was an ordinary person, they wouldn't have the ability to react at all. But to Yiqing Luo, these sword moves were nothing. But Yiqing Luo was still rather surprised. Yi Fengru was not only a grandmaster alchemist, his sword skills were not bad. His Xian grade had also improved since the last time they fought in the Ling King tomb. Very few people could concoct medicine and cultivate at the same time. Suddenly Yiqing Luo caught a glimpse of a strange glint flashing past his eyes. Yiqing Luo's heart shuddered as she immediately withdrew her hand and retracted her profound qi. Her footwork expanded and her figure disappeared in midair. Yi Fengru's long sword slashed down. Visible to the naked eye, a mass of white powder drifted in the air. Yi Fengru's expression froze and his warm expression disappeared. He furrowed his brows and looked around vigilantly. Second brother is still as sinister as ever. You still want to take the opportunity to poison me? Have you forgotten the lesson from last time? Yiqing Luo's sweet laughter was heard coming from his back. Yi Fengru was startled. He immediately turned his head and retreated. Fixing his eyes on her, he saw Yiqing Luo standing not too far away from him with a face full of smiles, as her smile was filled with ridicule. Yi Fengru gripped his long sword tightly as he watched the poison powder he had painstakingly refined scatter in the wind. The rage in his eyes started to burn wantonly. Yiqing Luo's reaction was actually that fast? She actually managed to evade it before he used the poison? How could she have guessed his next move? Recalling the last time in the Ling King tomb, he had tried to poison Yiqing Luo repeatedly. But Yiqing Luo easily evaded it. Whereas he had suffered Yiqing Luo's poison powder. That heart-wrenching pain. He absolutely wasn't willing to suffer it a second time. Star. Chapter 1987. Yiqing Luo had a panoramic view of Yi Fengru's expression. Her lips curled upwards and her smile became even more radiant. Second brother, do you know that there's always someone better out there? As a dark alchemist, your skill in alchemy is constantly improving, but even though I'm wholeheartedly cultivating my profound grade, I've never neglected alchemy. Looking at Yi Fengru's pale face as he took a few steps back, Yiqing Luo's curved brows looked extremely demonic. Yi Fengru relied on his identity as a dark alchemist. He wanted to take back the pain he had suffered the last time in the Ling King's tomb. But he neglected it. He wasn't the only one who had improved. You. Yi Fengru's fingers turned white as he gripped his sword tightly. His gloomy eyes were filled with an eerie chill. Yiqing Luo, your arrogance will make you die a tragic death sooner or later. He flipped the long sword, his eyes were cold as he waved the long sword again, profound chi burst out. Yiqing Luo shook her head with a chuckle as she easily raised her glower flame fan to block that sword. Second brother, you're too weak, I really don't want to waste time with you. She clicked her tongue as her vision went past Yi Fengru and landed somewhere. Immediately, the smile on her lips became even more scornful. But second brother, don't worry, you won't be too lonely. Her words had just ended when Yiqing Luo had already flown up and retreated a long distance backwards. Yi Fengru had used all his strength to slash towards Yiqing Luo. While contending against Yiqing Luo's glower flame fan, he had used up all his strength. And Yiqing Luo's sudden retreat. This caused Yi Fengru's body to become unsteady. His entire body staggered forward a few steps, and then heavily fell on his face. Yi Fengru's expression instantly turned gloomy. He climbed up from the ground and wanted to attack Yiqing Luo again. But the moment he turned around, his footsteps stopped. Behind him was a group of about 1,000 people dressed in blue mercenary group uniforms. Their bodies, front and back, were embroidered with an extremely conspicuous kill word with golden thread. Death God Mercenary Group. On the Mercenary Group honor roll, ranked third in the Gold Medal Mercenary Group Guild. The leader of the group was delicate and handsome, but he did not lose his dignity. He was the leader of Death God Mercenary Group, Nangong Firen. Firen? Yi Fengru's hand that was holding the long sword paused as he stared at Nangong Firen without blinking. Ru, how could you walk this path? Nangong Firen's face was filled with pain and his voice was extremely hoarse. A small head popped out from behind him. Nangong Lin looked at Yi Fengru timidly and pursed her red lips. Big brother Ru. Why did you abandon the Killing God Mercenary Group? Facing the brothers who had fought together with him. Facing the brothers who had gone through thick and thin with him. The expression on Yi Fengru's face gradually loosened. Why? His thin lips trembled as he gently spat out 3 words. Suddenly he chuckled softly. You asked me why? Nangong Firen frowned and slowly closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she exhaled and said, You did it for Chanshan, didn't you? At the mention of Zi Chanshan's name, Yi Fengru's body trembled slightly. His gloomy eyes flashed with traces of madness and a faint wry smile. It's you who abandoned Chanshan. It's you who abandoned us. Chanshan colluded with the dark forces and attempted to destroy the entire Nirvana realm. She deserved to die. Nangong Firen's voice was cold as he said word by word, As the executive leader of the Death God Mercenary Group, you colluded with the dark forces and attempted to destroy the West Continent on behalf of the Three Springs sect. Do you really think that you only represent the Three Springs sect? Where do you put the Death God Mercenary Group and the brothers who have gone through thick and thin with you? Star. Chapter 1988. Yi Fengru was stunned as his eyes were in a trance. His gloomy eyes revealed endless hesitation. Yi Fengru, don't forget what you've promised me. As long as you succeed, I will try my best to fulfill your conditions. Just at this moment, Wolf Saint Art's voice was heard. Yi Fengru raised his head as his body swayed slightly as he stared at Wolf Saint Art in a daze, looking helpless, as though he had not regained his senses from Nangong Firen's provocation. Ru Azura is very pained towards Chanshan's death. I know you like Chanshan, but she's already dead. What you need to do is to look forward. Nangong Firen saw this and immediately increased his tone as he advised, Don't continue to make mistakes. You still have Azura and us brothers. Before Nangong Firen could finish his words, Wolf Saint Art bellowed angrily again, Yi Fengru, think carefully about what you want the most. What? Yi Fengru suddenly raised his head as a gloomy glint flashed past his eyes. He held the long sword in his hand tightly. I only want Chanshan alone forever. Chanshan died in Yiqing Luo's hands, so no matter what, I must kill Yiqing Luo to take revenge for Chanshan. His voice turned cold like ice. Nangong Firen, if you insist on stopping me, then don't blame me for not caring about our brotherhood. Brother? Nangong Lin hugged Nangong Firen's arm. Her eyes were glistening with tears as she stared at Yi Fengru in a daze. Lin, be good and move aside. You can't mess around here. Nangong Firen knew his sister's intention. He forcefully pried Nangong Lin's hand away. I've given him a chance. Since he's willing to abandon his brothers for a woman, I have nothing to say. Lin, there are thousands of men in this world. I will find you a man who is better than him. Nangong Lin pursed her red lips tightly as her eyes filled with tears. She knew that everything her brother did was for the sake of the overall situation and for her. She knew that Yi Fengru had never liked her from the start and only treated her like a sister on account of Nangong Firen. But she liked Yi Fengru. She didn't want to see her brother and brother Ru kill each other. Beilai. Nangong Firen shouted. Wei Bailey's expression was unfathomable. When Nangong Firen shouted for the second time, he walked out and grabbed Nangong Lin's wrist. Look after Lin. I'll stop the gnome. The other brothers protect the West Wave continent. As soon as Nangong Firen gave the order, he flew forward and engaged Yi Fengru. Brother Ru. No matter how unwilling Nangong Lin was, she was still dragged to the back of the crowd by Wei Beilai. The mercenaries of the Death God mercenary troop received the order and immediately charged in the direction of the Dark Coalition. Move aside, Nangong Firen. I don't want to fight you today. Seeing that Yi Qingluo's figure had already dashed towards the battlefield, Yi Fengru gritted his teeth and wanted to chase up to her. However, in the next moment, Nangong Firen had already closed in on him. Nangong Firen's face was calm. He didn't use any weapons. He was barehanded and only wanted to trap Yi Fengru. Yi Fengru's target was to stop Yi Qingluo from joining the battle. In that case, his target was to stop Yi Fengru from making mistakes again and again. Chapter 1989. Ha, stupid. Jing Yanyan, who was lying on the ground, unable to move, sneered at Yi Qingluo's actions. Just like that, they attacked the place where the two armies were fighting without any hesitation. Wasn't she afraid of hurting her own army? Did Yi Qingluo really thought she was heaven-defying? She could control her own profound energy and had her own consciousness, not attacking the royal army. However, at the next moment, Jing Yanyan spat out a mouthful of blood in shock, only to see the sky full of airflow turning into several sharp wind blades. Wherever the wind blades went, the dark forces and 10 scenery sect's disciples were all slashed into several pieces by the wind blades. Whereas the direction of the wind blades, coincidentally, it evaded the royal army completely. It didn't hurt the royal army at all. This scene made Wolf Saint-Effe's brows crease tightly. Wolf Saint-Effe. What should we do with Yi Qingluo, that little slut, making a move, together with those two sacred beasts? We won't be able to last more than 1 hour. After Butterfly Saint-Effe evaded Yi Qingluo's wind blades, she flew towards Wolf Saint-Effe's direction. She seductively wiped off the blood stains on her face filled with displeasure. Their Saint-Effe had always been high and mighty, there was no need for them to do anything themselves. Today, everything was listening to Wolf Saint-Effe's orders. 3 Saint-Effe and 4 pharaohs all joined the battle. But Wolf Saint-Effe just stood by the side and watched. If it wasn't for the fact that Wolf Saint-Effe had an absolute trump card in his hands, they couldn't be bothered to take this vexation. Wolf Saint-Effe glanced at Butterfly Saint-Effe sinisterly and sneered, "What's the hurry? Just drag the time. No matter what, we will definitely win this battle." Looking at Wolf Saint-Effe's confident look, Butterfly Saint-Effe was filled with curiosity. "Wolf Saint-Effe, what are you trying to hide? It's already so urgent. Can't you just say it out and boost everyone's morale? You don't believe in this Saint-Effe?" Wolf Saint-Effe's tone sunk as though he was impatient. Butterfly Saint-Effe pursed her lips as a sliver of unresigned anger flashed past her eyes. But very quickly she suppressed that anger and revealed a smile. "Why wouldn't I believe you? If I don't believe you, why would we be charging forward here? Then cut the crap." Wolf Saint-Law gave a cold snort without the slightest bit of tenderness towards the fairer sex. "Those trash are unable to hold Yi Qingluo back. The few of you think of a way to hold her back. Otherwise everything will be for naught." The Butterfly Saint technique clenched her fists. Since they had already come this far, they could only cling to the last straw of hope. Otherwise, in today's battle, even if they escaped from the Nirvana realm, they were afraid that even if they hurt Yi Qingluo, they would not be able to escape the pursuit of the Overlord. Now that things had come to this, he could only believe in the Wolf Saint technique. The Butterfly Saint technique joined the battle once again, as it headed straight towards the target, Yi Qingluo's direction. Die. Pharaoh Crane had been paying attention to the whereabouts of the Butterfly Sacred technique. When he saw her coming over, he immediately flashed to her side. "What did that wolf say to you?" Butterfly Saint technique. "Delay Yi Qingluo, otherwise all previous efforts will be wasted." Pharaoh Crane, he still hasn't said what his trump card is. Based on the current situation, who can control Yi Qingluo? They had all crossed hands with Yi Qingluo. Towards Yi Qingluo's ability, they were clearer than anyone else. If they fought head-on, they might even lose their lives. Look at Yi Qingqian. Then look at Sect Master Shijing. Sect Master Shijing and Yi Fengru were specially used by the Wolf Saint technique to hold Yiqing Luo back. But they had all failed. They held Yiqing Luo back. What were they going to use to hold her back? Especially now, Yiqing Luo, who was using the power of the God Relic. He was simply unrivaled. Star. Chapter 1990. Butterfly Saint Technique's expression was gloomy as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Qian, who was in a pool of blood and flesh behind the Wolf Saint Technique. If it wasn't for that woman acting on her own, we wouldn't need to waste so much effort to delay Yiqing Luo. Originally, Wolf Saint Law had already decided on a plan. But Yiqing Qian, that woman, thought that she could cover the sky with one hand. Why must he go against Yiqing Luo? Now, not only did he cause himself to suffer unspeakably, they even had to pay with their lives. Before they were tortured to death by Yiqing Luo, Wolf Saint Technique had yet to reveal his trump card. What was the use of stalling for time? Pharaoh he and the Wolf Saint Mage were never on good terms. He especially loathed the useless women that the Wolf Saint Technique had brought back. Although that woman had the exact same appearance as the former Fox Saint Law. However, his temperament and strength were two extremes. Only the Wolf Saint Technique, who was infatuated with the Fox Saint Technique, would treat this similar-looking Yiqing Qian as a treasure in the palm of his hand. Now because of Yiqing Qian, the strength of the dark forces was greatly reduced. What's more, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to delay the Wolf Saint Law from taking out his trump card. How could they not be resentful? How could they not be angry? If not for the fact that they could only rely on the so-called trump card of the Wolf Saint Technique. They would absolutely disregard the Wolf Saint Technique and strangle Yiqing Qian to death. After Yiqing Luo joined the battle, not only did it lessen the pressure on the royal army, it also boosted the morale of the royal army. Each and every one of them had an insane fighting prowess. Especially with the addition of the Death God mercenary group and other forces. The dark forces were gradually losing strength, and their combat power was getting lower and lower. Moreover, towards Yiqing Luo, the dark forces had already developed an instinctive fear towards her. One had to know that this young lady was the one who had sealed the consciousness of their king of darkness. Kill these traitors. You are the kings of the Western continent. It contains our dark forces' holy techniques and dark secret arts. What was there to be afraid of? Kill. Kill. The wolf's sacred eye roared furiously when it saw that the morale of the dark faction was dropping. You have the noble bloodline of the dark forces. What pressure do you have to deal with these lowly humans from the mortal world? What did a 15-year-old girl have to fear? If one wasn't enough, then two would go. If two didn't work, then three. No matter how powerful she is, she can't fight against four people. And your Three Springs sect. You are one of the four major sections. Could it be that you can't even deal with the traitors of your own sect? What use do the Three Springs sect have for you? Look at your sect master. He's fighting for the Three Springs sect's peace. How long are you going to be afraid? The Wolf Saint Technique enunciated each and every word clearly and sonorously. His dignified tone ignited the fighting spirit of the dark forces and other forces that were afraid of him once again. The Wolf Saint Dharma continued, don't forget, from the moment you stepped onto this path, you have no way out. You can only fight with your lives on the line. Kill all these traitors and rebels. The dark forces had already joined the dark forces in the Western continent, and at this time, they had no choice but to be on high alert to deal with the attack of the Imperial Army. Indeed, they had no way out. Once they did, they would lose to the Royal Army. In the annals of history, they would be labeled as rebels and traitors instead. They could not afford to lose this battle. Chapter 1991. That might not be the case, there's always a way out. Yiqing Luo's sweet laughter reverberated in the air, which was filled with killing intent. The young lady suddenly left the battlefield and stood in the air. A captivating red long dress fluttered in the wind, like a blazing flame. Her red lips rose slightly as she looked down at the two armies who were fighting below. The entire Westlake Square had long been dyed red with blood and corpses littered the ground. She gradually concealed the smile in her eyes as her expression turned solemn. Her solemn voice floated in the air. All of you from Three Springs sect were bewitched and instigated by scoundrels, and also listened to that unjustifiable sect master's orders, which was why you joined the dark forces. Which allowed that unjustifiable person to attempt to make use of you, to clear his name as the sect master. And all of you knew that the dark forces were expelled by the Nirvana realm, but still endured the unwillingness in your hearts and chose to listen to the sect master's orders. That was enough to show your loyalty to Three Springs sect. Such loyal people are exactly the talents that I, Three Springs sect, need. Now I, the legitimate young matriarch of Three Springs sect for 15 years, is back. All of you can think clearly. Is it the unjustifiable sect master who could even lay a hand on his own father to forcefully obtain the sect master's position, who you are loyal to? Or are you loyal to me, the publicly acknowledged young matriarch for the past 15 years? The people from Three Springs sect were stunned as their hearts started to waver. No matter who it was, they could tell that Yi Fengru's position was unjustifiable. Yi Qingqian had obviously been chased out of Three Springs sect. But Yi Fengru and Yi Qingqian collaborated, and even introduced the dark forces into Three Springs sect. Three Springs sect had been in the West Lake continent for as long as 10,000 years. The people from Three Springs sect were born and bred in the West Lake continent. Towards the West Lake continent they naturally had feelings. The invasion of the dark forces and the act of controlling the West Lake continent, wanting to invade the West Lake continent, had long made the people from Three Springs sect unhappy. Now, hearing Yiqing Luo's words, how could they not waver? No matter who it was, they would not bear to have their names recorded in the annals of history as traitors. Since ancient times, although it is said that the victor is the king and the loser is the thief, the truth of the matter can never be completely erased. In today's battlefield, everyone should be clearer than anyone else in your hearts. Who are the rebels and traitors? Who are the traitors and enemies who want to invade and destroy the Western continent? Yiqing Luo's voice was loud and clear. With the power of profound qi, it spread to the entire public square. This battle involves the survival of the Western continent. Do you want to see the West continent that you protect be invaded by a foreign force that has been expelled by the Nirvana realm, and become a lackey of a foreign force? Do you want to see the Western continent plunge into an abyss of suffering and all the common people become food for the dark forces? Do you want to completely destroy the West Wave continent, destroy the home that belongs to us? Each voice was more impassioned than the last, one louder than the other. Not only the people from Three Springs sect were convinced by Yiqing Luo. Even the disciples of the other 10 scenery sects that had joined the dark forces were shaken. In the entire square, only the sounds of the dark forces fighting with the royal army could be heard. The other forces couldn't help but stop the attacks in their hands. They all raised their heads, looking at the young lady who was suspended in midair. She was obviously just a 15-year-old young lady, and on the surface she looked so slender as though she would be blown away by the wind. But the aura that was emitted from her body, and that majestic imposing manner which made one submit to her, made one's heart feel solemn. Star. Chapter 1992. Everyone's heart was trembling. She was like a queen looking down on the world, leaving an indelible mark in the hearts of the crowd. That was right. Even if they weren't from the West continent, they didn't attach much importance to the survival of the West continent. But since ancient times, the winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. But the truth would never be buried. The truth that they were the real traitors would eventually be passed down to the future generations. What's more, the dark forces belonged to the dark forces. Would they really fulfill the promises they made? Once the dark forces invaded the West continent, then, wouldn't they have to take action against the other 3 continents? The West continent was definitely not the lowest among the 4 continents, but it was easily controlled by the dark forces. What about the other 3 continents? Thinking of this, not only Three Springs sect's people were shaken. 10 Scenery's disciples and other small forces were shaken. Nonsense. Don't listen to that which is nonsense. Yi Fengru's long sword slashed through Nangong Firen's obstruction as he charged forward, shouting at the top of his voice. At this moment, where was the slightest bit of elegance that he once had? Nangong Firen charged forward and tangled with Yi Fengru again. His blue mercenary uniform was stained with blood. It was obvious that Yi Fengru had never shown any mercy to him. However, Nangong Firen had not taken out his weapon from the start and had been entangling him with his bare fists. This scene fell into the Death God mercenary group's eyes, and it made them gradually develop a resistance towards Yi Fengru. Although Yi Fengru, as the executive leader, had managed the team very well, it was still not enough. And he had won the hearts of the members. But at this very moment, seeing Yi Fengru treating his own brother in such a manner for a woman who had colluded with the dark forces, even going against the Death God mercenary group, they couldn't understand such feelings at all. Especially after hearing Yiqing Luo's impassioned words. They couldn't understand Yi Fengru's actions. What's more, in order to cooperate with the dark forces, Yi Fengru was even ruthless to his own father. Clang, a sound of weapons clashing was heard. The Three Springs sect's people threw down their weapons. With one person taking the lead, more and more people threw down their weapons. After careful consideration, he finally chose to pledge allegiance to Yiqing Luo. They were not willing to cooperate with the dark forces. He also didn't want it to be passed down to the later generations and be cursed. Those who surrender will be killed without mercy. Lang Xingfei's expression was sinister. He had not expected Yiqing Luo to be so good at inciting people's hearts. Yifengru, that trash. He couldn't even control his own men. It was just a few words and it made Yiqing Luo waver? The dark forces obeyed the order and quickly turned towards the three Spring Sect's people who had dropped their weapons and lost their ability to fight. With us here, let's see how you're going to kill them. The Death God mercenary group held their weapons tightly and immediately stood in front of the three Spring Sect people. Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing also followed the sound and killed the dark forces that were charging at them one by one. Everyone of the three Spring Sect, this time, please pick up the weapons in your hands and protect our Western continent, our Three Springs Sect. You will all be our Three Spring Sect's heroes. I represent the Three Spring Sect's young matriarch to promise everyone that after Three Spring Sect has settled down, you will all receive Three Spring Sect's medal. Chapter 1993. Yiqing Luo's words deeply shook the hearts of those from Three Springs Sect. They succumbed to Yiqing Luo's charisma, her ability, her aura, her dignified and awe-inspiring boldness, all of which made the people from Three Springs Sect succumb to her. This time, the people from Three Springs Sect had at least lost 2/3 of their men. As for the remaining 1/3, they were Yi Fengru's only trusted aides after so many years in Three Springs Sect. The people from Three Springs Sect picked up their weapons once again. This time they were protecting their homeland. To protect their West Continent. To protect the citizens of the West Continent. This time they had nothing to fear. Whereas for the dark forces, because 2/3 of the people from Three Springs Sect had switched sides, their ability dropped drastically. Coupled with Yiqing Luo's impassioned speech earlier, many of the small forces on the Dark World side were also affected. For example, the people from the Shangguan family were affected the most. In just a short moment, the Dark Forces' ability was reduced step by step. As time passed, they were suppressed by the royal army until they retreated step by step. As for the few holy techniques and pharaohs, they were worried that they would be tortured by Yiqing Luo so that they would lose their lives. So naturally they wouldn't risk their lives. Wolf Saint Technique was so angry that he kept shouting and cursing, pointing at the dark forces, warning them non-stop. However, the dark forces were still retreating step by step. Very soon, they had retreated to the boundary of the West Continent public square, converging towards Wolf Saint Technique's direction. The morale of the royal army was getting stronger and stronger. All of them pressed forward. Just at this moment, a flattering scream was heard from afar. Wolf Saint Technique, Wolf Saint Technique. Yin family is willing to help the dark forces. Yin family is willing to pledge allegiance to the dark forces. Then, a group of more than 1,000 people hurriedly ran over from afar. Those 1,000 people in Wolf Saint Technique's eyes were nothing, especially when the royal army's morale was soaring. It was just a drop in the bucket. But Yin family's goodwill, Wolf Saint Technique naturally wouldn't reject it. As long as he could delay Yiqing Luo until he could reveal his trump card, it was enough. As for these insignificant people, even if they sacrificed their lives, it was their honor to sacrifice their lives for him, Wolf Saint Law, the future ruler of the Nirvana realm. Patriarch Yin led all the people of his family and went forward to welcome them. All right. Good. Your choice is correct. As long as you can agree to this battle on my behalf, I will grant you a request. The Wolf Sacred Technique spoke calmly, its attitude extremely lofty. However, Patriarch Yin was beaming with joy as he pushed the young girl beside him towards the Wolf Saint Technique. The Wolf Saint Technique is wise and the Wolf Saint Technique is mighty. This is my daughter who has admired the Wolf Saint Technique for a long time. Today my daughter wants to see the Wolf Saint Technique. She wants me to bring my family to the Wolf Saint Technique. The young girl was delicate and pretty. She looked no more than 14 or 15 years old, but she wore heavy makeup and deliberately put on a coy look. It really made the young girl's liveliness lose some color. The Wolf Saint Technique didn't say a word, only raising his brows as he glanced sideways at the young girl who was pretending to be shy. This glance made Patriarch Yin even more excited as he took the opportunity to say, "If the Wolf Saint Technique doesn't mind after the battle ends, my daughter will stay by the Wolf Saint Technique side to serve you. What does the Wolf Saint Technique think about it?" Wolf Saint Technique, my name is Yen Jinfei. You can change to my Fei. Yen Jinfei lowered her head shyly as she twisted her body and said in a tender voice, "Fei has admired the Wolf Saint Technique for a long time. I hope that the Wolf Saint technique can fulfill Fei-er's sincerity. Star. Chapter 1994. Wolf Saint Magic squinted his sinister eyes. He who was good at scheming naturally didn't miss the glint in the 14 to 15-year-old young lady's eyes. He laughed coldly in his heart. But on the surface he revealed a humble expression. I'm indebted to Miss Yan's kindness. If Miss Yan doesn't mind following this old man, I'm naturally willing to leave a message for Miss to accompany me. Patriarch Yan's expression turned joyful as he hurriedly pushed Yan Zhenfei towards Wolf Saint Magic's direction. Yan Zhenfei's footsteps seemed to be unstable as she cried out and fell towards Wolf Saint Magic. Wolf Saint Magic immediately stretched out his arm and wrapped it around Yan Zhenfei's waist. For eyes met. Everything was formed in a flash. Patriarch Yan was filled with joy as he hurriedly called out to his own forces to join the Dark Forces army and start the battle. This was the Yan family's only chance to climb up. Pushing the daughter whom he had doted on for over 10 years over. Patriarch Yan was already giving it his all. Looking at his adorable daughter smiling shyly at the Wolf Saint Fa, Patriarch Yan felt a bit reluctant to part with her. After all, she was the daughter he had doted on for over 10 years. He wholeheartedly nurtured her, wanting her to marry into the royal family to raise Yan family's status. Now, she could only be given to that old man who was almost 50 years old. In terms of age, Wolf Saint Magic was probably older than him by a few years. This time, their Yan family must grab hold of this opportunity. They must absolutely not let Fei-er's sacrifice go to waste. Some people were happy while others were worried. Yi Qingqian, who was thrown behind by Wolf Saint Magic, was still conscious. Yi Qingqian clearly saw the Yan family rushing to the battlefield. She clearly saw Yan Zhenfei pretending to lean into Wolf Saint Magic's arms. She clearly heard Wolf Saint Magic wanting to keep Yan Zhenfei by his side. She was so angry that her head was about to explode. That damn vixen. She actually seduced Wolf Saint Magic while she was seriously injured. The woman beside Wolf Saint Magic could only be her alone. Only she was the woman in Wolf Saint Magic's heart. Yan Zhenfei, that vixen, how could she snatch Wolf Saint Magic away? Wolf Saint Magic. Wolf Saint Magic. Yi Qingqian pursed her lips unwillingly as she called out Wolf Saint Magic miserably. When Yan Zhenfei heard the voice, she timidly raised her head and looked towards the direction of the voice. What she saw was a mass of flesh and blood, looking at her viciously. Yan Zhenfei exclaimed in shock and shrank back. That lump of flesh and blood was so badly mangled that it was almost impossible to tell what it was. The only thing that could be seen clearly was the pair of venomous eyes. Yan Zhenfei had grown up in the love of her parents. It was the first time he had seen a bloodbath on a battlefield. This was also the first time he had seen such a gaze. Be careful, Miss Yan. Wolf Xingfa reached out and grabbed Yan Zhenfei's wrist. His powerful palm stabilized Yan Zhenfei's stumbling figure. Yan Zhenfei blushed slightly and lowered her eyelashes. She said softly, Thank you for the Wolf Saint technique. The Wolf Saint Law pulled her into his embrace and gently patted her slender back. There's no need to be afraid. She's just an unimportant person. After the war is over, I'll deal with her. Yan Zhenfei's eyes were filled with joy. But when she thought about how she was still in Wolf Saint Fa's arms, she was immediately overwhelmed by embarrassment. She lowered her head and buried it in Holy Wolf's arms. In her eyes there was a scheming look. Since her father had asked her to bewitch Wolf Saint Magic, how could she possibly not know what that pile of flesh and blood was? A woman who had lost her looks and body. To her it was not a threat at all. One could tell from Wolf Saint Magic's attitude towards Yi Qingqian. Chapter 1995. Hearing Wolf Saint Dharma's heartless words. The sinister glint in Yi Qingqian's eyes gradually dimmed. Her lips trembled as she wanted to go hysterical. But she didn't know what to shout about. From the start to the end, Wolf Saint Dharma had never turned back to look at her. Because her face, which was similar to Wolf Saint Dharma's, had been destroyed? So she had completely no longer become the fox in Wolf Saint Dharma's heart, right? And this Yan Zhenfei was the second person to replace her? The more Yi Qingqian thought, the more hopeless she felt. So that in the end she shut her eyes fiercely. She was filled with unwillingness and stubbornness. But she was powerless. She couldn't even move her own body. At this moment, Yi Qingqian finally understood the real reason why Yi Qingluo sent her back to Wolf Saint Dharma. This was the real torture for her. Yi Qingluo had long seen that Wolf Saint Dharma only cared about her face. Destroying her face was equivalent to destroying the bond between her and Wolf Saint Dharma. She who had lost Wolf Saint Dharma had no way to continue living. But how would she be willing to die under Yi Qing Luo's schemes? Yi Qing Luo was planning on this. Wanting her to seek death, there was nothing she could do. Making her feel unresigned, living in despair. Yan family's addition was indeed a drop in the bucket. But, at least there was another batch of people who were seeking death. The dark forces could also relax a little. After Yi Qing Luo instigated most of them to change sides, she retreated to the back of the Mu family. Her face was slightly pale. That look made old Master Mu couldn't help but ask about her well-being. Mu Lai was even more concerned about Yi Qing Luo's pulse. Thank you everyone for your concern, I'm fine, just overused profound energy and a little tired. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as she shook her head. The reason why she chose to use the instigation method was because the power of the God Relic had been exhausted. She wanted to use the power of the God Relic to deal with Wolf Saint Dharma. But her current body couldn't hold on for too long. Her profound jade heart didn't allow her to expend too much of her energy. She needed to adjust the profound energy in her body before she could recover. The people of the Mu family didn't need to form a bounded domain. At this time they could protect her and let her adjust her dark force. Approximately 2 incense sticks of time later, Yi Qing Luo slowly opened her eyes. The situation of the battle was still the same. The royal army kept pushing back the dark forces. The main reason was that the soldiers of both sides had fought for too long and were somewhat exhausted. As a result, neither side was able to advance or force the other to take a step back. Seeing Yi Qing Luo opening her eyes, Mu Xiao looked at her anxiously. "Lass, how do you feel?" "I have a high-grade pill that can heal internal injuries here. It was refined by a medicine ancestor ranked medicine master and I've kept it for many years to save my life. Hurry up and eat it." As he spoke, Mu Xiao fished out a palm-sized wooden box from his interspatial ring. When the box was opened, there was a tiny pill lying inside. It was a faint golden color. This pill was indeed a high-grade pill, and it was worth 1,000 gold. How could Grandpa Mu be so generous to her, a person whom he just met? He even took out a life-saving pill. Yi Qing Luo felt warm in her heart. She smiled as she shook her head and spoke in a warm voice. "I'm not injured, nor do I have any internal injuries. Thanks to Grandpa keeping watch for me. After resting for a while I feel much better." Mu Xiao didn't believe her and insisted on checking Yi Qing Luo's pulse. Chapter 1996. Upon checking her pulse, Mu Xiao's brows twitched. Yi Qing Luo was indeed not injured. Her pulse was smooth, no different from an ordinary person. However, this kind of pulse made Mu Xiao even more suspicious. Even after resting for a period of time and adjusting the profound qi in her body, Yi Qing Luo's complexion was still slightly pale. If her pulse was normal, why was her complexion so ugly? Apparently, Yi Qing Luo was indeed not feeling well and she intentionally stopped him from checking her pulse. Not waiting for Mu Xiao to voice out his suspicions, Yi Qing Luo had already stood up and looked towards the direction of the battlefield. "Old Master Mu, this battle, the brothers are all tired, everyone should take a break." Mu Xiao was still guessing how serious Yi Qing Luo's discomfort was. Suddenly hearing Yi Qing Luo's question, he was stunned. "Marching to war, how can we rest just like that?" Before he finished his words, Yi Qing Luo had already flew up, turning into a magnificent shadow as she headed towards the direction of the battlefield. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's appearance, the Dark Forces army instinctively felt fear as they all raised their heads to look at her. They saw Yi Qing Luo flying directly towards Wolf Saint Magic, and finally she alone passed over 10,000 Dark Forces army and stood in front of Wolf Saint Magic. Wolf Saint Magic's expression sunk as his 5 fingers suddenly clasped Yan Zhenfei's shoulder tightly. He narrowed his long eyes as he looked coldly at Yi Qing Luo. "You want to fight with me?" "Yes." Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as she laughed wantonly. "Since the two armies are locked in a fierce battle, as the two main characters who started the battle, you have to make a move no matter what, isn't it?" Wolf Saint Magic scoffed. "Just based on you?" "Just based on me." Yi Qing Luo continued to smile warmly. "Both armies will stop fighting and will fight. If you win, the West Continent will belong to your Dark Forces. If you lose, then the Dark Forces scram out of Nirvana realm. How about that?" Wolf Saint Magic's eyes were raging. "Why should I agree to that?" "Based on your self-confidence." Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "Don't tell me Wolf Saint Magic is afraid that he can't match up to me?" As she spoke, she nodded in sudden realization. "That's true. Wolf Saint Law was defeated by me. Now, if he lost to me in front of his own subordinate, it would be even more embarrassing. No wonder you're afraid of me." After that, Yiqing Luo blinked her pure and innocent eyes as she smiled at the Wolf Saint technique. The current battle situation is very obvious. If I were to take action, the royal family's army would obtain victory in less than half an incense's time. But you. If you were to fight with me now, you might even be able to win the West Continent. But, since the Wolf Saint technique is so afraid of me, then I have no other choice. Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. Coincidentally, it reached the ears of the surrounding dark forces. The way everyone looked at the dark forces changed. Wolf Saint Fa's face turned ashen. Hearing Yiqing Luo's ridicule, he couldn't wait to strangle her to death. What Yiqing Luo said was indeed not wrong. According to the current situation of the battle, it was only a matter of time before the royal army won. If Yiqing Luo were to take action now, she would indeed be able to annihilate the dark forces in less than half an incense's time. Fighting with Yiqing Luo alone was indeed the only chance to win the West Continent. Although the Wolf Saint technique didn't want to admit it. But he indeed couldn't defeat Yiqing Luo. He had suffered quite a number of losses in Yiqing Luo's hands. Moreover, Yiqing Luo still had the divine relic in her hands. He wasn't Yiqing Luo's match. But to let him show weakness to Yiqing Luo in front of the dark forces? Wouldn't that be telling the dark forces, don't struggle in vain, just surrender? The Wolf Saint technique would become the joke of the dark forces? Chapter 1997. Looking at the smiling young lady in front of him. Wolf Saint Magic's body tensed up, his face was extremely dark and terrifying. His malicious eyes were filled with viciousness. If he didn't agree, the people from the dark forces would probably be incited by Yiqing Luo to change sides again. If he agreed, would he be able to delay until his trump card appeared? The battlefield was in a dead silence. The air was filled with a bloody and oppressive atmosphere. Everyone's vision seemed to be gathered on Wolf Saint Magic. This battle had been going on for too long. The armies on both sides were exhausted. Especially the Dark Forces army, they were already suffering unspeakably. The truly powerful holy techniques tried their best to hide behind them. Even when they were killing the royal army, they didn't pay attention at all. They watched their own brothers, one by one, die in front of their eyes. Not only were they exhausted physically, their hearts were also extremely tired. If Wolf Saint Magic agreed to fight Yiqing Luo alone, the current situation was the best choice for the dark forces. However, Wolf Saint Magic remained silent for a long time. Apparently he had no intention to fight. That restless heart of the dark forces gradually started to feel a sense of disgust. To begin with, they were already feeling extremely indignant after being repeatedly defeated by a group of humans from the lower realms. One must know that Nirvana realm was the lowest level of living beings. It was known as the lower realm's lowly place. They, who were above the lower realm forces, were actually beaten by a bunch of lowly humans without any ability to resist. This was especially so for their masters. The 3 saint techniques and the 4 pharaohs had allowed their own brothers to be wiped out by the royal army until their blood stained the ground. Yet, not a single one of them was willing to step forward to avenge them. Those 3 saint magic and 4 pharaohs hit faster than anyone else. Looking at the royal army's side, every time they injured one of them, there would be countless of them rushing forward, shouting for their lives to take revenge for that person. Moreover, the royal army's various forces all cooperated and protected each other. In comparison, the people from the dark forces felt a strong sense of difference in treatment. Wolf Saint Magic and the rest totally disregarded the lives of these small fries. They fought with their lives just because of Wolf Saint Magic's words. What was it for? The Dark Coalition's morale was completely shaken by this. Just as the morale of the army was falling and the Wolf Saint Law had yet to answer. A soft and delicate voice that pretended to be shy sounded out with a hint of probing intent. Wolf Saint Technique, why don't you let Fei, or accept the challenge? Wolf Shengfa was startled and lowered his head to look at the person in his arms. The young girl's face was bashful, but her expression was firm. The Wolf Saint technique is powerful and domineering. Why would he fight a 15-year-old girl? I'm afraid student Yiqing Luo is planning on this. Yen Zhenfei slowly retreated from Wolf Saint Law's embrace. She raised her eyes and fixed her gaze on Yiqing Luo. Student Yiqing Luo, if Wolf Saint Dharma were to fight one-on-one with you, even if he won, Wolf Saint Dharma's face wouldn't be glorious, and in the end he would even be accused of bullying a young lady. Do you really think that everyone is an idiot who can be fooled by you? Yen Zhenfei's words easily resolved the predicament of the Wolf Saint technique, and even raised the Wolf Saint technique, taking the opportunity to pull a wave of hatred towards Yiqing Luo. It wasn't that the Wolf Saint technique didn't dare to accept the challenge. He just couldn't be bothered to argue with a little girl. Yan Zhenfei's words were indeed reasonable. Even if Wolf Saint Dharma won Yiqing Luo, no matter how heaven-defying or abnormal Yiqing Luo was, everyone would only feel that Wolf Saint Dharma was bullying a young lady. No wonder Wolf Saint Dharma had not accepted the challenge for so long. Chapter 1998. The Wolf Saint technique also assumed a dignified posture. He narrowed his sinister eyes and wore an indifferent expression, as if he disdained to explain and was too lazy to do so. His long arm gently pinched Yan Zhenfei's shoulder, and his lips curled into a smile of admiration. It was obvious that he was really satisfied with Yan Zhenfei's intelligence. Yan Zhenfei's eyelashes drooped shyly, and following that she looked towards Yiqing Luo in a natural and unrestrained manner. So for this battle I will represent Wolf Saint technique to fight. You and I are around the same age, moreover we are students from the same academy, so no matter if we win or lose, it is an extremely normal thing. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms over her chest as her brows rose, squinting at Yan Zhenfei. In his memories Yan Zhenfei wasn't this smart. Although this lady was Yan Xiaoyi's elder sister who shared the same father and mother. But their IQ was definitely not on the same level. But today Yan Zhenfei's performance really made Yiqing Luo astonished. Yan Zhenfei looked calm on the surface, but in her heart she was extremely nervous. Especially after meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, she felt a chill running down her spine as her legs started to tremble. However, in order to help the Yan family hold onto the Wolf Saint technique's thigh, she had to support the family on her own. She wanted to prove that the Yan family's choice of her, the eldest miss, was definitely not wrong. She would absolutely not give Yan Xiaoyi any chance to make a comeback in the Yan family. The eldest daughter of the Yan family could only be her, Yan Zhenfei. Thinking of this, Yan Zhenfei's eyes shone with determination. She took a deep breath, raised her head and looked at Yiqing Luo with a smile, using the same words to counter. Could it be that student Yiqing Luo is afraid? Compared to the last time they met, Yan Zhenfei seemed to have changed into another person. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. She really didn't know what kind of blow made this unruly and headstrong young lady grow up so quickly. Could it be? Because she realized that Yan Xiaoyi was a student of the devil class, and her innate talent was above hers. A sense of crisis? Yiqing Luo narrowed her long and narrow eyes as she met Yan Zhenfei's provocative gaze. Afraid? Do you think you have the qualifications to make me afraid? She sneered arrogantly and wantonly. Yan Zhenfei, you can't even compare to a single hair on my Xiaoyi. Tell me, what right do you have to fight with me? Yan Zhenfei's face darkened. Comparing Yan Xiaoyi to her was simply her reverse scale. Yan Xiaoyi, that wastrel, what right did she have to be compared with her? He seemed to have seen through Yan Zhenfei's thoughts. Yiqing Luo smiled faintly as she added, No, you're a fellow who can't even take one move from me. How are you fit to be mentioned on the same level as my Xiaoyi? Yan Zhenfei's eyes instantly widened as her face sunk, as she directly rushed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. In a flash, Yan Zhenfei took out two sharp knives from her waist. The two blades spun rapidly in her palms and a powerful profound energy exploded out from her body. Do you really have to come here to die? Yiqing Luo's smile was extremely shallow as she yawned impatiently. Then I can only satisfy you. Yiqing Luo's words landed. Her flame-like sleeves suddenly began to dance. A gust of wind swept up. A cold glint flashed past Yan Zhenfei's eyes as the twin blades in her hands suddenly condensed an extremely powerful profound energy. The twin blades spun extremely sharp. But in a blink of an eye, it was already nearing Yiqing Luo, as it directly slashed towards Yiqing Luo's vital spot. Bam! Yiqing Luo's hurricane clashed against Yan Zhenfei's twin blades. Chapter 1999. Just as everyone thought that Yan Zhenfei would be sent flying along with Yiqing Luo's hurricane. But they saw Yan Zhenfei gripping her twin blades tightly as she bit her lower lip to stop the blood gushing out from her throat, as she suddenly pressed downwards. The spectating commoners didn't know how much effort Yan Zhenfei had expended in this move. They only saw. Yan Zhenfei wasn't sent flying by Yiqing Luo instead. She was forced towards Yiqing Luo. Even the Ten Views sect master was unable to do this. Yan Zhenfei actually did it? What was the background of the Yan family? Why was this Yan family's daughter so powerful? Even Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Was Yan Zhenfei so concerned about her, or was it because she mentioned Yan Xiaoyi's topic? So concerned that she didn't even want her life? She actually forcefully broke through her profound energy, trying to take away her life. One must know that this kind of action of forcefully charging into the profound energy, any slight carelessness would cost one's life. She really didn't know if she should praise Yan Zhenfei for being brave or ridicule her for being dumb and ignorant. The twin blades in Yan Zhenfei's hands shone with a sharp glint. At the moment when she broke through the profound energy, Yan Zhenfei's lips curled into a cold smile as the short blade in her hand swiftly slashed towards Yiqing Luo's neck. Yiqing Luo, do you really think that I'm still the Yan Zhenfei who was at your mercy? Yan Zhenfei raised her chin complacently. I'm now an Earth Profound 7th grade cultivator. Now go and die. Yes, Yan Zhenfei was now an Earth Profound 7th grade cultivator. For her age, Earth Profound 7th grade, she could be considered as a genius among geniuses. A rare existence in this world. She who was in the 7th grade realm could be considered as a high-leveled cultivator. Just based on that slut Yiqing Luo who only knew how to bully others, how could she be compared to her? Look, wasn't she able to easily break through Yiqing Luo's profound wave now? Even if Yiqing Luo didn't want to fight with her. She absolutely wanted Yiqing Luo to fight with her. She wanted to personally crush Yiqing Luo's arrogance and pride. As long as she destroyed Yiqing Luo. Even if Yan Xiaoyi wanted to make use of external factors to regain the Yan family. Even then he wouldn't have the chance. The complacent Yan Zhenfei didn't notice that when she mentioned that she was already at Earth Profound 7th grade, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a scornful arc. Earth Profound 7th grade? If I remember correctly. The last time he saw Yan Zhenfei was just a Xian practitioner who had just entered the Earth Profound realm. At that time he couldn't even take one move from Yan Xiaoyi. In just a few short months he had already advanced to the 7th grade of the Earth Profound realm. How much effort did the Yan family put into Yan Zhenfei? He actually forcefully raised Yan Zhenfei's profound grade to such a level in such a short time. One had to know that it was impossible for a person's profound level to have such a qualitative leap with just elixirs. Even the dark forces abstruse yin qi could not help Yan Zhenfei improve so quickly. Moreover, it was obvious that the Yan family had only established a relationship with the dark forces today. Where did Yan Zhenfei's change come from? Yiqing Luo, you know you can't hide anymore, so are you prepared to die obediently? Yan Zhenfei's sharp voice interrupted Yiqing Luo's thoughts. She raised her eyes and saw Yan Zhenfei's attack coming towards her. Like a hot knife through butter, it was extremely ferocious. Yan Zhenfei neared. Yiqing Luo could clearly see the complacent and arrogant expression on her face. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as her sleeves danced once again. As though it was a casual sweep. The red profound glow shot upwards. Star. Chapter 2000. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out. Yan Zhenfei's body was struck by the dark radiance and she flew backward. She fell heavily to the ground and rolled a few times on the ground. After a long while he steadied himself. Yan Zhenfei mustered up her willpower as she half knelt up, looking at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. Was she dreaming? Yiqing Luo had obviously just casually waved her sleeves earlier. How could he block her twin blades? Moreover, it was done with such ease that it seemed as if it was as easy as blowing off dust. Earlier when she broke through Yiqing Luo's profound wave, she was obviously unscathed and didn't suffer any harm at all. Didn't it prove that Yiqing Luo's profound grade was not as good as hers? Why did a casual wave of Yiqing Luo's sleeve have such a powerful force? No, she absolutely did not believe that Yiqing Luo's profound grade would be above Earth Profound 7th grade. That's it. Yiqing Luo ridiculed him. I've said this before, just based on scum like you, I totally disdain to fight with you. As she spoke, she slightly raised her chin and shot a torch-like gaze at Lang Xingfa, who was watching the battle from the side. She arrogantly provoked, Lang Xingfa, are you still planning to hide behind a trashy woman like a tortoise? Yiqing Luo. Yan Zhenfei's eyes were burning with rage as she gave a low howl and charged towards Yiqing Luo. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo's profound grade was above her. She didn't believe that after paying such a huge price and growing to this stage, she still wasn't able to defeat Yiqing Luo. She Yan Zhenfei was the only young miss of the Yan family. No one can replace her position. She must kill Yiqing Luo, to cut off Yan Xiaoyi's chance to make a comeback. Looking at Yan Zhenfei's frenzied and reckless expression, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yiqing Luo's figure flashed. Yan Zhenfei missed. Before she could regain her balance, Yiqing Luo had already raised her leg and kicked towards Yan Zhenfei. With a loud thud, Yan Zhenfei knelt face down on the ground. He appeared to be in an extremely sorry state. Yiqing Luo. You bitch. The last word was forcefully swallowed back into his stomach. Yiqing Luo rushed towards her face once again and sent another flying kick downwards. This kick caused Yan Zhenfei to roll a few more times on the ground. She crashed into the corpses and bones on the ground, stopping the inertia. Yan Zhenfei, with your trashy strength, you have the nerve to stand up for Wolf Saint Fa? Don't forget the agreement I made with the Wolf Saint Law? Yiqing Luo looked down arrogantly at Yan Zhenfei from above as she gave an extremely ridiculing smile. This battle, if the dark forces were to lose, then they would have to scram out of Nirvana realm forever. She raised an eyebrow. Her figure flashed and she appeared in front of Yan Zhenfei. What do you want to do? Yan Zhenfei was shocked and wanted to carry him away. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand and locked her lower jaw. Her slender fingers clenched tightly, exerting all her strength. Her charming eyes curved and she smiled devilishly. So, you scum, scram to the side. You are not qualified to represent the dark forces. Yan Zhenfei was in so much pain that cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. However, Yan Zhenfei had thought too highly of herself. Her chance to glare at her angrily didn't last for too long. Yiqing Luo had already thrown Yan Zhenfei aside as though she was throwing rubbish. Her gaze was directed towards Wolf Saint Law. At the same time, her feet moved and she flew up. As though there was wind beneath her feet, she brought along a strong, profound energy as she attacked towards Wolf Saint Law's direction. Wolf Saint Law, if you don't want to fight, then I'll take it that you've admitted defeat. Yiqing Luo gave a crafty smile as the glower flame fan in her hands suddenly opened up. Numerous tiny silver needles shot out with a swoosh 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 sound. Star. Chapter 2001. The Wolf Saint Law's eyes turned cold. The tiny silver needles flickered in his eyes. Wolf Saint technique, be careful. Yan Zhenfei struggled to climb up from the ground, but her ribs, which had been broken by Yiqing Luo, couldn't support her strength at all. The Wolf Saint technique spread his 5 fingers, and a stream of mysterious yin qi was released from his palm. The palm energy was strong and it rushed towards the silver needles that were coming towards him. His face was extremely gloomy. Looking at Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was filled with an intense malevolence. Wolf Saint technique knew very well that he would not be able to gain any advantage in Yiqing Luo's hands. If he were to forcefully fight with Yiqing Luo, in the end he would be the one to suffer and lose face. After the Wolf Saint Fa sent out his palm wind, he dodged to the side and shouted coldly, "This Saint Fa has never agreed to such an unfair wager." Just as the eldest daughter of the Yan family said, "Even if I defeat you and obtain the Western continent, I will only become a laughingstock. Therefore there's no such thing as admitting defeat if I don't fight you." These words made Yiqing Luo's eyes oozed out a sneer of disdain. He was clearly no match for her. Yet he purposely used such high-sounding words to cover up this fact. Then let her turn the Wolf Saint technique into the joke of the West continent. Let the Wolf Saint technique completely lose the morale of the army. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. As long as the Wolf Saint technique was defeated by her, would the dark forces still have the mood to continue fighting? Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as her fingers moved. Those numerous silver needles were like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, abruptly avoiding the Wolf Saint technique's palm wind, shooting out from all directions. The momentum of the silver needles was extremely fast. From the angle of the Wolf Saint technique, he could almost clearly see that the silver needles were filled with black poisonous gas. Poison. That would be another one of Yiqing Luo's good shows. If he was corroded by the poisonous gas, I'm afraid, a life worse than death. Wolf Saint technique knew very well that under Yiqing Luo's innocent and harmless appearance hid a heart that was completely unlike a 15-year-old girl's. He wanted to avoid it. But the angle of Yiqing Luo's silver needles were extremely tricky. The Wolf Saint technique dodged the incoming silver needles. However, there was no way for him to avoid the silver needles that shot at him from other angles. Just as Yiqing Luo's silver needle was about to shoot towards the Wolf Saint technique, suddenly, everything around the West Wave continent was covered by a powerful pressure. It was a kind of pressure that could only be condensed by a high-level profound practitioner. The surrounding trees were rustling from the strong winds. The sound came from afar as if it was right in front of them. A strong pressure spread out. His target was Yiqing Luo's direction. Ding ding dong dong, there were a few crisp sounds. The silver needles were swept into a ball by the hurricane. This powerful dark force flew straight towards him. The armies on both sides were sent flying one after another. Everyone was shocked. What kind of power was this? He was actually able to easily blast all of us profounders flying? Everyone in the Mu family reacted quickly. Before even more profound practitioners were injured by that pressure. Without any hesitation, he used his own power to form another barrier that enveloped the direction of the royal army. As for the Mu couple, they followed Long Yunzhan and the rest as they speedily headed towards the direction of those cultivators who were sent flying, to receive those cultivators in case they caused any more damage. But the dark forces weren't so lucky. Just as the strong pressure covered the sky and covered the earth, 3 Saint techniques and 4 pharaohs escaped faster than any of them. Not to mention protecting them. Chapter 2002. The battlefield had become extremely chaotic. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as her eyes were filled with vigilance. Her silver needles had actually been completely blocked. Not a single one more. In this world, the number of people who could do this could be counted with one's fingers. But right now there was a gush of mysterious energy. Light. Luz. All of her silver needles had been blocked. Who on earth was this person? Was he an enemy or a friend? Why did he intervene in this battle? Countless doubts filled his mind. Following the onslaught of the hurricane, a figure appeared indistinctly in the hurricane. Wolf Saint Law, who had just saved his life, sat down on the ground in shock as he panted heavily, until those silver needles fell beside his feet one by one. He then regained his senses. Sir, you. Wolf Saint Law's face lit up as he swiftly climbed up from the ground, his face filled with ecstasy as he looked ahead. The hurricane dissipated and that figure gradually became clearer. That was an elderly in his 60s, dressed in a black long robe. This long robe was totally different from the black robes of the dark forces. It looked extremely exquisite and noble. The elderly placed his hands behind his back as he looked at Wolf Saint Law, who was heading towards him with an arrogant look. When Wolf Saint Law saw who it was, the smile on his face froze as his hurried footsteps also stopped. Sir, why? Wolf Saint Law's expression turned ugly as he pursed his lips tightly as he asked in a muffled voice. The elderly stood with his hands behind his back as his aura was fully unleashed, giving off an oppressive feeling. His old eyes were extremely sharp as he stared straight at Wolf Saint Law, taking in all the expressions on his face. His shriveled lips formed a cold arc of ridicule. Sir still has some matters to settle and is temporarily unable to rush over, so he sent me to assist Wolf Saint Law. Wolf Saint Law glanced suspiciously at the elderly. Although the elderly's aura was very strong. But Wolf Saint Law didn't know the elderly's ability. Could this elderly really fight with Yiqing Luo? Since Sir has sent me to assist, then I hope Wolf Saint Law will believe in Sir's choice. If Wolf Saint Law has no trust in Sir, then both of our cooperation will come to an end. The elderly scoffed as his eyes were filled with ridicule. Wolf Shengfa was angered by the old man's words. He suppressed the rage in his heart and forced a smile. No. How could I doubt your choice? As he spoke, he respectfully bowed towards the old man. I hope Senior can lend a hand. The old man snorted and glanced disdainfully at the Wolf Saint Law. He walked right past him and walked forward. As the old man walked over, a terrifying wave of air that could destroy heaven and earth suddenly erupted from the old man's body. The airwaves were like surging tides, like vortexes. You juniors, if you know what's good for you, throw away your weapons and choose to surrender. Otherwise, don't blame me for attacking you juniors. The old man's deep voice was sonorous and powerful, and his aura could swallow mountains and rivers. That aura caused the troops from both sides to feel astonished. The energy that sent all the profound practitioners flying earlier was released by this old man. The air billowed and the vortex churned as if it could devour the entire world. What kind of power was this? It was too terrifying. Even Mu Xiao couldn't help but reveal an astonished expression when he felt this surge of power. Since when did such a powerful person exist in Nirvana realm? Surrender? Old grandpa, what a big tone you have. A sweet voice was heard from the right side of the old man. Yiqing Luo walked slowly to the front of the old man and smiled lightly. Are you the external help that the dark forces have invited? Star. Chapter 2003. When the elderly's vision was fixed on Yiqing Luo, a glint of radiance flashed past. Young lady, I'm indeed here to help the Wolf Saint technique. He spoke calmly as his sharp gaze swept past Yiqing Luo's eyes. Could it be that young lady is the representative of the West Continent? No, I can't represent the West Continent. Yi Qing Luo met the elderly's gaze as her glower flame fan swayed gently. I'm merely protecting my home, protecting this piece of land that I grew up on. When the elderly heard that, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Young lady, in that case you're going against me? Against me? Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. If you want to take action against other continents, naturally it's none of my business. But if you want to help the dark forces to invade my west continent, then I have no choice but to interfere. Her curved brows were narrow and alluring, so lively that it seemed like it could speak crystal clear. The elderly laughed loudly as he examined Yi Qing Luo. Young lady, do you know who I am? So young and frivolous, aren't you afraid of offending someone you can't afford to offend? He scoffed lightly. I see that you're pretty, so I won't be calculative with you. Now move aside and I'll spare your life. Yi Qing Luo's fingertips moved as the glower flame fan opened up, covering half of her face. She gave a tender smile as her charming eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule. Old grandpa, are you trying to be an old cow eating young grass? But you've taken a liking to me, but I despise you. Her words fell. Yi Qing Luo's figure suddenly shot upwards. Her blazing dress was like a blooming rose. The glower flame fan in her hands suddenly opened up as it turned into a chi dragon. The dragon head was raised high while the tail of the head swayed. The red chi dragon was vivid and lifelike. That chi dragon spiraled around, appearing extremely noble and majestic. The surrounding chi was like a surging tide as it surged. Yi Qing Luo's attack made the elderly's eyes flash with a sliver of interest. He gave a cold laugh as his palm moved. His black sleeves brought forth a burst of earth-shaking energy. In a split second, the entire West Continent public square seemed as though it was about to collapse as the wind whistled past their ears. His surrounding profound energy was like a huge wave that surged into the sky. Following his attack, it was like a surging tide, surging towards Yi Qing Luo. Qing Luo. Miss Yi. What? A few worried and panicked voices came from all directions. Long Yunzhan raised his blue long sword and was about to rush up to help Yi Qing Luo block this move. Tong Ziqing immediately hugged his arm. Class rep, calm down. Qing Luo would be fine. You can't go there, you'll die. Anyone could see the old man's strength. It was completely beyond everyone's imagination. Ordinary people like them went up. In a matter of minutes, he would be crushed into pieces by the energy shot out by the old man. I will die if I go over, then what about Qing Luo? Long Yunzhan's entire body tensed up as he used all his strength to shake off Tong Ziqing's hand. A pair of azure blue eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo's direction in terror. There was no way Tong Ziqing would let go of him. On the other side of the battlefield, the dark force of heaven and earth was still rolling and surging. The energy dragon created by the gourd flame fan collided with the old man's profound energy. After a while, the chi dragon weakened. Following that, it dissipated into the air. The blue in Long Yunzhan's eyes turned deeper. The hands under his sleeves clenched tightly into fists. Let go. Long Yunzhan berated coldly as he used his strength and flung Tong Ziqing aside. Tong Ziqing used all her strength on Long Yunzhan. Chapter 2004. Ugh. A muffled moan was heard from Tong Ziqing's nose. She held onto the ground in pain as she felt a tearing pain on her back. Perhaps it was because she had fallen onto the broken rocks, cutting the skin on her back. Tong Ziqing bit her lower lip tightly as she endured the pain as she hugged Long Yunzhan's leg tightly. Class monitor, you can't go. That force is too strong, you can't go. Long Yunzhan's eyes were filled with worry as he looked at the battlefield which was shrouded in profound chi. His heart was filled with worry, almost tormenting him to madness. Long Yunzhan's ears could no longer hear Tong Ziqing's voice. He lowered his head and was about to push Tong Ziqing away. His gaze fell onto Tong Ziqing's slender back which was stained with blood. His pupils suddenly constricted. The broken rocks had cut through Tong Ziqing's rough green robe. It revealed half of her back skin. Fresh blood covered that area, an ugly scar which would never disappear. Bright red blood stung his eyes. Long Yunzhan's expression congealed as he regained his senses. Are you all right? He bent over and carried the disheveled Tong Ziqing into his arms. Warm blood covered his palm. This was Tong Ziqing's scar on her back because of him. Now this scar, because of his pushing, had spread again. Looking at the lady whose eyes were red but she was enduring the pain, only repeating the words asking him not to go over. Long Yunzhan's heart could no longer persevere as he let go of Tong Ziqing and rushed into the battlefield to help Yi Qing Luo. In just a short period of time, Yi Zichen's expression changed. On the battlefield, a burst of profound energy colliding and exploding was heard. Long Yunzhan immediately looked over. He saw that petite figure standing steadily in the hurricane. She held onto her glower flame fan as she and the elderly man's palm wind were in a stalemate in midair. The surrounding air was also faintly trembling. Terrifying chi rays set off waves after waves of air, stacking layer upon layer. Just one look and one felt extremely shocked. After the two forces collided once again, the profound energy dissipated, completely disappearing. Yiqing Luo retreated several steps. Her feet left a long mark on the blood-soaked ground. The old man only took a small step back. The elderly narrowed his malicious eyes as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. "Young lady, your aptitude is not bad." Initially, this old man thought that there was probably no one else in this nirvana realm who could block this old man's attack. Unexpectedly, you little lady actually managed to block this old man's attack. The corners of his lips curled up and he said with a bewitching smile, "Little girl, are you interested in becoming my disciple? If you become my disciple, I will teach you everything I know." Grandpa, you really want to eat the cradle. Yiqing Luo's face was filled with disgust as she looked at the elderly man in astonishment and shook her head hard. "I'm a young lady from a decent family, old grandpa, we don't date. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." In the old man's eyes, it was his honor to take a fancy to this group of lowly humans. This insolent little girl actually dared to refuse him? Moreover, her words were so unpleasant to hear. "Little girl, this old man will give you a word of advice. Nirvana realm is about to perish. As long as you become this old man's disciple, this old man can bring you away from Nirvana realm, to live in other planes." The elderly man's malicious eyes stared at Yiqing Luo's eyes without blinking. Perish? Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Chapter 2005. Lass. Suddenly Yiqing Luo felt a warmth on her wrist as old man Song's voice entered her mind. His voice was a little solemn as he said in a deep voice, "This person is not someone from the Nirvana realm. From the aura he exudes, he should be from the upper realm. Earth realm. Earth realm people? Why would someone from the Earth realm come to Nirvana realm? Could it be that he was not afraid of heaven's punishment? One must know that this was a place where massacres were everywhere and the strong were respected. The most important thing was the balance of each realm. Nirvana realm was the lowest realm among all the major realms. A profound practitioner of the Earth profound realm here could already be considered a high-level profound practitioner. But if placed in the Earth realm, an Earth profound realm cultivator was just a low-level cultivator. Especially in the Nirvana realm, the Sky profound realm cultivator was revered. In the Earth realm there were a lot of them. This was the difference between the two realms. And because of this, in order to maintain the balance of each realm, once the profound energy exceeded the limit of this realm, it would be drawn into the upper realm. And people from the upper realm, without the permission of the upper realm's realm emperor, they could not go to the lower realm and disturb the balance. Of course, they could also imitate Qiao Jin and disguise themselves as an upper-level cultivator from the lower realm. No matter what, Heaven Wei would not be able to detect Qiao Jin's aura. But obviously, this old man in front of them did not disguise himself at all as he released his profound energy unscrupulously. Was he not worried about Heaven Wei's punishment? Not worried about being forcefully sent back to the Earth realm? The dark forces actually colluded with people from the Earth realm and invited people from the Earth realm as external help. How could our West Continent's army defeat the experts from the Earth realm? Yiqing Luo frowned as she looked at the old man vigilantly. If he deliberately suppressed his profound energy and only used the limit of Nirvana realm to deal with you, Heaven Wei will naturally not be able to detect his strength. After old man Song explained, he said in a serious tone, "Little girl, if the people from the Earth realm intervene, I'm afraid that the West Continent will be in danger. Even if the upper realm wants to remedy the situation, it will take some time for them to descend from the upper realm." Yiqing Luo caught the main point, the period of time you mentioned. What do you mean, how long? Every world position has its own passageway. It takes at least 4 hours to pass through that passageway. Old man Tsang said, "However, without the permission of the realm emperor, the guards at the passageway will not let you pass." It is clear that this old man secretly came down from the Earth realm. He must have spent a lot of time. Yiqing Luo muttered as she calculated in her heart, which means to say the dark forces had long colluded with that bunch of people from the Earth realm. That was why the old man was able to arrive in time. If the old man from the Earth realm interfered, the royal army would definitely not be able to withstand it. Right now she was the only one who could stall the old man. When Diamo Xian rushed over, only then could this matter be completely resolved. There was always someone better out there. After seeing the old man's ability, Yi Qing Luo's heart was filled with the urge to have a go. But more than that, he was calm. If she wanted to fight with an expert, even the slightest mishap would happen. It wasn't just her life that had been destroyed. Instead, it was the entire Western continent. Yi Qing Luo didn't dare to use the West continent to gamble. Since the Wolf Saint technique had invited external help, then she could also invite external help. Chapter 2006. Young lady, why are you still in a daze? From the looks of it, you've decided to become this old man's disciple. The elderly's gloomy voice was as cold as ice. As he said that, he flew towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. He stretched out his arm and grabbed Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. Then leave with me now. His fingers were extremely shriveled and looked extremely horrifying. His 5 fingers were slightly bent and turned into eagle claws as he clawed towards Yi Qing Luo, totally not showing any amiability as a master. On the contrary, it seemed like he wanted to take her life. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned cold. Her reaction was extremely swift as she turned sideways and avoided the elderly's eagle claws. Following that, her toes tapped lightly on the ground and her figure swiftly retreated backwards. A red robe fluttered in the wind, like a burning flame. Following that, her slender fingers gently brushed past the glower flame fan. A surge of red light burst out violently. Numerous silver threads encircled the elderly. Those silver threads were like sharp blades. Layers upon layers, as though it was trying to wrap the elderly into a silken silkworm cocoon. Following the manipulation of Yi Qing Luo's fingers, the silver threads turned into circles and circles of ripples and huge waves, like a surging tide, constantly encircling the profound energy. Qing Luo won. Qing Luo won. Tong Ziqing nestled in Long Yunzhan's arms, looking at the battle situation. Her face revealed a joyous expression. When the others heard that, their anxious and worried expressions also surfaced a joyous expression. Earlier, that elderly was wrapped into a cicada cocoon by Yi Qing Luo's silver threads. This should be considered as Yi Qing Luo had won that elderly. Wolf Saint Law had been looking at the elderly anxiously. Towards that sir, he had never believed him. That person had said that he would personally come to Nirvana realm to help him occupy the West continent. But in the end he sent an old man over. Although the old man's ability was very strong, but he could not be compared to Yi Qing Luo. What was the use of being strong? What he wanted was a strong practitioner who could deal with Yi Qing Luo. After seeing Wolf Saint Law being completely covered by the silver threads, Wolf Saint Law's expression was as black as charcoal. If that person still didn't come, what chance did they have to win? Could it be that he really had to flee again? Wolf Saint Fa's face was ashen as he cursed that person in his heart. Just as everyone was cheering, Yi Qing Luo's fingers, which were clenching the glower flame fan, suddenly paused. Her expression is serious and her sharp eyes sweep over the people who are about to come over. He won't die so easily. Stand in the enchantment of the Mu family, and no one is allowed to come out. Yi Qing Luo's words had just landed. There was a loud bang sound. Immediately after, an explosion occurred in the direction of the cicada pupa. Puffs of white smoke and dust floated up. The huge cicada pupa exploded, and a strong airflow lingered in the air, one circle after another. Gradually it turned into a whirlpool. Amidst the smoke and blood, after the cicada pupa exploded, the elderly man clenched his fists tightly as he stared furiously at Yi Qing Luo. His long black robe had been cut in several places by the cicada pupae. He looked extremely disheveled. Because of this, the elderly man was extremely furious. The expression on his face was sinister and terrifying. All right, young lady, I will seriously play with you. I want to see where your limit is. The elderly man clenched his teeth as he gave a chilly smile. The surging profound energy followed the aura of the cicada pupa, as it shot out a powerful force. Yi Qing Luo's face turned pale. She immediately flipped the glower flame fan and blocked that profound energy which was charging towards her. Even though she had reacted in advance. But she still couldn't avoid the elderly man's attack. This attack directly broke through Yi Qing Luo's resistance and struck fiercely towards Yi Qing Luo's chest. Star. Chapter 2007. Bam! Yi Qing Luo's petite body was sent flying. Everyone stared at that slender figure as she was sent flying like a cannonball. Their hearts started to wrench. They wanted to rush forward and help Yi Qing Luo to block this attack. However, the enchantment formed by the elders of the Mu family forcibly separated them. Yi Qing Luo felt a fishy sweetness gushing up her throat. She took a deep breath and released her profound qi, trying her best to stabilize her body, to prevent herself from crashing into the pool of blood. Her 2 feet in the ground drew a long ditch. Finally, when her body stabilized, she propped herself up. Her breathing was a little messy. Her body swayed slightly. After some time, her breathing gradually calmed down. She raised her eyes, the corners of her eyes curved as she smiled lightly. "You're indeed a senior from the upper realm, your ability is indeed very strong." The elderly's eyes suddenly sunk, the gaze which looked at Yi Qing Luo revealed some suspicions. This lady actually knew that he was from the upper realm? Who was she? How could she recognize that he was from the upper realm? And, although he didn't use his full strength in the attack earlier, but he used 50% of his strength, this little girl from the lower dimensions was actually able to remain unscathed after receiving a strike from him? No wonder. The dark forces had always been arrogant. Wolf Saint Technique actually took the initiative to seek cooperation from Sir. The elderly squinted his malicious eyes as he sneered, "Good fellow, young lady, this old man is getting more and more interested in you, and wants to take you in as my disciple even more." He dragged the last syllable extremely long. Suddenly, his voice abruptly raised, "Now this old man will test your innate talent properly." His voice had just ended when a strong ray of profound light shot out from the elderly's body. The invisible pressure covered the entire square. The barrier set up by the Mu families old and young at this moment was unable to withstand the pressure and loosened. If one looked closely, one could see Mu Xiao and Master Mu Chu. The corners of their mouths were bleeding. Apparently the elderly was serious. Yi Qing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes, as her slender brows knitted tightly. The 5 fingers which were holding the glower flame fan clenched into a fist. The innate talent and profound rank of the people from the Earth realm were already above hers. If the old man was serious about fighting with her, she would never be able to gain any advantage. He stared at the old man's profound strength, which was still increasing explosively. Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed as her toes suddenly tapped lightly on the ground and her figure suddenly turned into a breeze, like a remnant shadow, heading towards the direction of the elderly man. She flipped the devouring flame fan a few times on her fingertips. A sharp dagger slid out from the handle of the fan. The red electric currents flowing around the glowing flame fan spread out layer by layer. That flirtatious red glow made Yi Qing Luo's devastatingly beautiful looks look even more flirtatious and alluring. She got close to the old man and attacked him in a close-quarters combat style. Competing with the old man with profound strength was a retarded way of doing things. Now he could only use modern close combat and ancient martial arts to seal the old man's attack and break his moves. Only then would they be able to achieve victory. The elderly had not expected that a delicate young lady like Yi Qing Luo would choose such a method to tangle with him. Close combat was indeed not his forte. But to deal with a young lady, it wasn't a problem. For a moment, the two of them were locked in a fierce battle. The spectators who were in a truce around the West Square revealed a shocked expression when they saw this battle. Chapter 2008. They seemed to have heard Yi Qing Luo mention that the old man was a senior from the upper realm. The dark forces had invited external help from the upper realm? The upper realm. To them, that was a godlike existence. No wonder this old man looked so mighty and domineering. His ability was so strong that none of them could maintain their balance under the old man's chi wave. Of course. Except for Yi Qing Luo, that pervert. Especially after knowing the old man's identity. Everyone felt that Yi Qing Luo was a pervert. Just how powerful was Yi Qing Luo? She was able to exchange hundreds of blows with an old man from the upper realm and even came to a draw. She was totally unaffected by the profound waves from the old man from the upper realm. Could it be that Yi Qing Luo was already a sky mystic overlord? And the grade wasn't low? F***K. What kind of F***king breed was this? Who was Yi Qing Luo? The famous good-for-nothing 7th young mistress. A waste of 15 years of time. In just a few months, not only had she caused a sensation in the entire West continent, she had even spread to other continents and her name had spread throughout the entire Nirvana realm. And then, in front of all of them, came to a draw with the old man from the upper realm. Were they dreaming? This talent, even the overlord couldn't achieve it, right? Everyone had thought that Yi Qing Luo and the old man had come to a draw, and it looked extremely easy. Only Yi Qing Luo herself knew. She had exhausted all her energy to engage in close combat with the old man. Although fighting with the old man in close combat was the best choice, it was not a wise choice. But the disparity of profound energy was too huge. The old man's counterattack, whether it was a punch or a palm, was several times stronger than Yi Qing Luo's strength. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo's sharp senses, she could display her footwork at the fastest speed and accurately avoid the old man's attack. But Yi Qing Luo would still be injured by the old man's attack. The profound light flickered and appeared faintly in midair. While they were exchanging blows, sounds of collision could be heard from time to time. Both of them exchanged over 10 blows again. Yi Qing Luo was gradually at a disadvantage. After the two of them exchanged a palm strike, both sides were sent flying back. The old man took a few steps back and steadied himself. "Little girl, your talent and limits have won my heart. I have decided that I will bring you to the Earth domain and train you well." Yi Qing Luo wasn't that lucky. After the two palms collided, she flew back dozens of steps. Finally, his heel pressed against a large tree that had been blown up by the mystical qi. Only then did he slow down his body. She took a deep breath. The intense pain eroded her limbs and bones. She felt as if her body was being decomposed. With every breath he took, he felt a stabbing pain all over his body. She calmed herself down and blinked her charming eyes. Only after a long time did she focus on the old man. She could smell the sweet scent of blood on her nose, ears, mouth. Traces of blood flowed out. As expected, the disparity in Shen rank was too great. Was he still unable to win? Her face turned pale, her body swayed, and her breathing became erratic. Her previous battle with Jing Yanyan had caused her to use the power of a divine artifact. She had first depleted most of her energy. After the divine artifact's energy was depleted, her own strength had also been affected. Now against the old man from the Earth domain. Chapter 2009. Yi Qing Luo's expression was seen by the elderly man. He sneered sinisterly as his malicious eyes stared deeply at that pale complexion. "Young lady, take a nap first. When you wake up, you'll be my proudest disciple." As he said that, his figure started to move swiftly. His palms flipped and his palm chi was extremely sharp as a tyrannical and powerful profound ray surged out. Yi Qing Luo's face turned paler by several shades. She held on to her willpower and bit the tip of her tongue hard, until the smell of blood filled her entire mouth. She took a deep breath as her feet moved, displaying her footwork in an attempt to avoid the elderly man's attack. But just as her feet moved, at the next instant, the elderly man's palm wind followed closely behind. Damn it! Her footwork had indeed been seen through. The current, her speed was totally incomparable to before. The elderly man could clearly see her trajectory. She couldn't avoid it? Bam bam bam. The palm wind struck, stirring up several air currents. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel the pain of the profound qi cutting through her body. She frowned as she fixed her eyes in front. She saw two figures standing in front of her, helping her to block the elderly man's palm wind. The man's blue robe fluttered, like the lake water, rippling under the strong wind. The woman's green robe fluttered as she held a long spear in her hand as her profound energy surged. Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing. They actually broke through the barrier, helping her to block the elderly man's rising momentum. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes sunk as huge waves surged in her enchanting blood-red pupils. "What are you guys doing here? Quickly go back." Although Long Yunzhan was an earth dragon, but his memory had yet to recover. His energy had yet to recover. He who had yet to transform into a dragon, how could he be the Earth Realm elderly man's opponent? Tong Ziqing. Her ability was indeed not bad. But in the Earth Realm elderly man's hands, she probably wouldn't last more than 3 moves. They were not the Earth Realm elderly man's opponent. "Qing Luo, take a rest. Leave the rest to us." "Qing Luo, you need to rest," Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing said in unison. They went up against the Earth Realm elderly man and directly started a battle with him. "You're rushing to die? You young people really value friendship and loyalty." The old man smiled coldly, and his eyes flickered with a mocking excitement. He licked his dry lips and smiled eerily. "Since that's the case, this old man will satisfy you. Your opponent is me." Yi Qing Luo howled hoarsely. Long Yunzhan, Tong Ziqing, the both of you scram back to the array barrier. Get lost. However, the two of them looked at the old man with excitement in their eyes, as if they had seen their prey. There was no fear in their eyes. The two of them looked at each other and their auras surged. A sword and a spear surrounded the old man. Yiqing Luo's face turned pale as she clenched her fists. Suddenly he raised his leg and was about to charge into the battle. However, his wrist was grabbed by someone. Mu Zhao's solemn voice resounded, "Little Yi, don't let them down. You're not in a good state right now, so you must adjust the internal force in your body." On the other side, Mu Lai and Shui Fei Shui blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. "Only you are able to cross hands with the people from the upper realm. If anything happens to you, wouldn't the West Continent be destroyed? Little Yi, you must recuperate quietly for a while to adjust the profound energy in your body so that you can save more people." Yiqing Luo's entire body tensed up as her eyes stared unblinkingly at the two who were battling with the old man. She didn't want to save anyone. She only wanted her brothers to be safe. Star. Chapter 2010. How could Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing be a match for the Earth Realm elderly man? Wasn't this pushing them towards the direction of death? She wasn't a saint and she didn't have any great ambition to save the common people, to save more people. For the West Continent. If she sacrificed Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing, she would rather destroy everything. Not a single one of her brothers could be left behind. Qing Luo, if you can't bear for us to be injured too badly, then quickly adjust your own profound energy, we're still waiting for you to save us. Tong Ziqing's cold and elegant face surfaced a faint smile. "Qing Luo, I believe you," Long Yunzhan said calmly. Their words were like a warm current, slowly flowing into Yiqing Luo's heart. Her charming eyes met with the two men's resolute eyes. Her heart at this moment suddenly brightened up. The two of them were trying to buy time for her treatment. They believed in her. Then she should choose to believe in them. Believe that they would be able to buy time for her to strike again. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers curled up one by one. Her eyes flickered slightly, faintly concealing all the brilliance. "Lassie, you'd better take this pill." Mu Xiao took out his life-saving pill which was used to treat internal injuries. "Jin and I will treat you together, catalyzing the medicinal effect. It will definitely allow you to recover more than half of your energy in a short period of time." Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips, looking at the two concerned faces in front of her. She took another look at the Earth Realm elderly man who was tangling with her. No, to be more accurate, the two of them who were being toyed with by the Earth Realm elderly man. She eventually closed her eyes. "Then I'll have to trouble you." The treatment began. Yiqing Luo was protected by the royal army in the innermost layer. Old Master Mu and Mu Lai helped Yiqing Luo to adjust her breathing. While Yiqing Luo was adjusting her breathing, she didn't forget to get in touch with Old Man Tsang. Old Man Tsang, this Earth Realm elderly man, even if he didn't expend any profound energy which exceeded Nirvana Realm's limit, does Heavenly Wei not care about him? Heavenly Wei was the god who controlled all the living things in the world. If the people of the Earth domain suppressed their dark force and abused their power in the Nirvana Realm, wouldn't they be punished by the Heavenly Tao? This Earth Realm old man dared to be so arrogant. It was very likely that he wasn't afraid of the Heavenly Tao's punishment at all? Or rather, did this old man from the Earth Realm have a special identity? Old Man Tsang was silent for a moment. "This point I have no way of knowing either." He paused for a moment and said, "By the way, when will Dizun arrive? If he was here he would have..." Bang! A violent collision sound interrupted Old Man Tsang's words. Yiqing Luo abruptly opened her eyes. In front of him, two figures flashed past. Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing were sent flying by a burst of energy. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled. However, she heard Mu Zhao's stern shout, "Little Yi, you can't be distracted at this crucial moment. Calm your mind." She felt a strong pressure on her shoulders that pinned her to the ground, not allowing her to move at all. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with a biting cold glint as she stared at Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing's direction. "They are not that elderly man's match. That elderly man is from the Earth Realm, he's from the Earth Realm." Her voice was extremely hoarse from worry. Chapter 2011. As though he had sensed the dispute on their side, the two of them who were sent flying speedily got up again. Their feet exerted strength as they held the weapons in their hands and charged towards the Earth Realm elderly man. Their bodies were filled with blood scars. Furthermore, Tong Ziqing's ears started to ooze out more and more blood. Their entire bodies were in a tearing pain. The two of them recalled Yiqing Luo and the Earth Realm elderly man's long battle. Yiqing Luo's injuries were much more serious than their external injuries. But Yi Qing Luo acted as though nothing had happened, as she fought with the Earth Realm elderly man over and over again. How could they possibly retreat just because of this little bit of injury? They wanted to let Yi Qing Luo recuperate her depleted profound energy as soon as possible. They tried their best to drag more time for Yi Qing Luo. The blue light in Long Yunzhan's eyes gradually became thicker as circles and circles of ripples kept on spreading. The blue long sword in his hand suddenly shot out an intense profound ray. Following the strong flickering of the blue light in his eyes, his profound energy became thicker and thicker, as though there was some kind of energy accumulating in his body waiting to be unleashed. This surge of terrifying profound energy made the elderly squint his eyes as he took a deep look at Long Yunzhan. In his eyes, a sliver of judging intent flashed past. "Lad, what are you? The aura from your body doesn't seem like an ordinary human's aura." The elderly man was apparently interested in Long Yunzhan. Long Yunzhan's long sword moved. It instantly turned into a ray of blue light. The dark force that was shot out actually cut the old man's robe. The elderly man's eyes suddenly shone as he gave a cold laugh. "Ha ha ha. I'd not expected that I would meet such a living being on this trip down to the lower realm. The lower realm actually has such a living being like you?" His eyes shone with obvious greed. "I want to subdue you." Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. Could it be that Long Yunzhan's human dragon identity had already been discovered by the elderly man? Following the elderly man's words, the elderly man's surroundings had already formed a huge profound qi. As though the surrounding air was enveloped under her profound qi, the two forces collided in mid-air. Long Yunzhan's body flew out once more. "Class President." Tong Ziqing panicked and rushed toward Long Yunzhan, wanting to catch him. But she did not move. The old man suddenly rushed in front of Tong Ziqing. A palm wind fell heavily on Tong Ziqing's body. "Ziqing." Long Yunzhan had finally stabilized his divine movement with great difficulty, but he hadn't expected the old man to suddenly charge in Tong Ziqing's direction at that moment. How could Tong Ziqing be the old man's opponent? The palm landed on his body. Her face turned deathly pale. She let out a muffled groan and collapsed to the ground. A heart-wrenching pain filled every corner of her body. The spear in Tong Ziqing's hand also fell into a pool of blood. She moved her hand, but she no longer had the strength to hold onto her spear, nor did she have the strength to stand up. This scene fell into Long Yunzhan's eyes. He felt a sudden pain in his heart. He watched as Tong Ziqing's body fell to the ground. Looking at Tong Ziqing, who had no strength to climb up. That cold and elegant face was almost pale, as though she would stop breathing in the next moment. Long Yunzhan's heart at this moment twisted together fiercely. "Ziqing!" He roared as the long sword in his hand pointed towards the elderly man, his expression extremely gloomy. "I'm going to kill you." A strong airflow crashed between the both of them. Chapter 2012. However, the disparity in profound grade was something that could not be bridged. Even if Long Yunzhan had already used his human dragon strength, in front of the Earth Realm old man he was still a clown. But moments later Long Yunzhan was also sent flying onto the ground. Yi Qing Luo's vision had always been on Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing's situation. Her heart was getting tighter and tighter. She couldn't wait to rush up and bear their pain on behalf of them. The Earth Realm old man squinted his sinister cold eyes as he sneered sinisterly. "Little thing, after forming a contract with me, I will not treat you badly." His smile became even more unbridled. He lifted his leg and walked towards the direction of Long Yunzhan, who had no energy to stand up. Yi Qing Luo's fingers tightened. This old man indeed discovered Long Yunzhan's secret identity. He recognized that Long Yunzhan was a human dragon, and he wanted to form a contract with Long Yunzhan. Little thing, obediently become this old man's battle pet. The Earth Realm old man stood beside Long Yunzhan as he bit his fingertip and dripped the blood onto Long Yunzhan's body. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted. Her brother, even she couldn't bear to hurt him. How could she allow an Earth Realm old man to form a contract as a war pet? All along, Zhan had always been a free human. Yi Qing Luo had never treated him as a human dragon. If the Earth Realm old man wanted to form a contract with Long Yunzhan, he had to ask her if she agreed. Just at this moment Yi Qing Luo felt an extremely subtle change in her heart. She faintly felt a scorching feeling coming from her profound jade heart. Her thoughts moved as she squinted her eyes as she tried to communicate with the God Relic. "I want to expend the God Relic's energy once more, is that possible?" "Lass, are you crazy?" Old man Tsang cried out in shock. Based on your current body, using the God Relic's energy once is already considered to be over your limit. Using the God Relic's energy once more, you might not be able to defeat that person from the Earth realm, and there is a possibility of your body suffering from the backlash. More importantly, your profound jade heart is not stable and cannot withstand your devastation. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly as her eyes were like frost, extremely resolute, but I have no second choice. I absolutely cannot watch Zhan being contracted by him. Old Man Song didn't know how to refute for a moment. Indeed, if he used the power of his divine artifact, he might be able to fight to a draw with that Earth Realm old man. Otherwise, even if Yiqing Luo had adjusted her depleted profound energy, he probably wouldn't be able to force the Earth Realm Elder to retreat. Old Man Song didn't stop him again. Yiqing Luo's thoughts moved and the divine artifact instantly connected with her senses. The divine artifact obeyed her every command. Yiqing Luo wanted to exhaust the power of the divine weapon for the second time. A divine artifact would obey all orders unconditionally. The conversation between these thoughts seemed to take a long time. In reality, it only lasted for a breath of time. On the other side, the Earth Realm Elder had already wiped the blood from his fingertip on Long Yunzhan's forehead. His face was filled with joy and excitement. He was about to form a contract with a human dragon as his battlefield. He could control a human dragon to fight for him. His status in the Earth domain would definitely rise because of this. As long as there was a human dragon, he would be even more powerful than that Lord. With that thought, the old man became even more excited. Just as the blood stained Long Yunzhan's forehead, the old man was about to release his profound energy and start to recite the oath. Suddenly, a hurricane blew past. That hurricane seemed to have a life of its own as it brushed past Long Yunzhan. Chapter 2013. Are you even worthy to touch my brother? Her voice was quiet and elegant, but it was extremely cold. The hurricane dispersed and a young lady dressed in a fiery red robe appeared in front of the old man. The young lady's face was frosty and her whole body was releasing flames, which was extremely intimidating. Even the old man couldn't help but be frightened by the young lady's look. The old man's expression changed and his malicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Stinky lass. Get out of my way. He was about to contract a human dragon. He was about to own a dragon as a war pet. Yiqing Luo could actually heal her injuries in such a short period of time? And even stopped him from contracting a human dragon? He remembered that when he hurt Yiqing Luo previously, he didn't show any mercy. Could it be that Yiqing Luo was doing this for that human dragon? The treatment was not over and she forcefully rushed over? Stinky lass. You know very well what this thing is. The old man's gaze was sharp as he sneered. You only have two choices now. First, bring this living creature out and let me contract it. After the contract, I promise you that I will never find any trouble with you forever. Second, I will spread this kid's secret. I believe there will be many people who are very interested in this living creature. Apparently the old man intended to threaten Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's eyes were cold as she snorted softly, her eyes were wrapped with an extremely biting cold glint. Immediately, her lips curled up slightly as she said softly, I choose the third option. The old man didn't expect Yiqing Luo to still be able to show off at this time. His face instantly turned gloomy. Before he could react, he heard Yiqing Luo laughing out loud. The third option, I will kill you to eliminate any future troubles. The old man couldn't help but burst out laughing when he heard that. Kill me? Just based on you? The old man gave her a contemptuous glance. Following that, his words turned into a tempting whisper. Stinky lass, you'd better be my disciple and hand over this living creature. I know you have a close relationship with this living creature. If you follow me back, you can see this living creature anytime you want, isn't it? Yiqing Luo didn't speak again, but directly used actions to explain. Without another word, she attacked the old man. The elderly man obviously sensed that Yiqing Luo's profound energy was much thicker than when they exchanged blows not too long ago. Her attacks were all filled with a strong killing intent. The old man was shocked. How was it possible for this young lady to raise her profound energy to such a powerful level in such a short period of time? How was this possible? Just now, she clearly looked like she was no match for him. What was going on? In the old man's heart, he kept on guessing the reason for the sudden change in Yiqing Luo's imposing manner. Under Yiqing Luo's murderous attack, it was getting more and more strenuous. Yiqing Luo's profound energy kept on increasing explosively. The berserk power was getting stronger and stronger. Bang! There was a loud noise. This time round, it was the elderly who was thrown onto the ground by Yiqing Luo. The old man was stunned. This was the first time he had been thrown away by a 15-year-old girl. He sat on the ground blankly for a moment. Shortly after, he leapt up from the ground, the expression on his face instantly becoming savage and terrifying. "Senior, she has a god relic on her, that's the power of a god relic." Wolf Saint technique reminded. "God relic?" The old man frowned. "Young lady, you have a god relic on you?" The greed in his eyes could no longer be concealed. This young lady, what background did she have? She had a human dragon as her brother. She had a god relic on her own? She could even use the power of the god relic. Star. Chapter 2014. Yiqing Luo sneered. "Why? Are you afraid?" Her 5 fingers clenched tightly as the glower flame fan in her hands turned into a tornado, like a huge whirlpool. At some point in time the entire square changed color. The whirlpool headed towards the elderly man's direction. That strong suction force made the elderly man's footsteps unstable. Everything around him was sucked into that huge whirlpool. The ground shook as numerous fine cracks appeared. The old man stood shakily, his robes fluttering in the wind. His entire head of silver hair was fluttering in the wind, showing its fangs and brandishing its claws. "Stinky lass. God relic and this little thing, I want them both." The elderly man was attracted by the strong profound energy released by Yiqing Luo as the greed in his eyes grew thicker. Following that, his eyes turned hazy. Facing that whirlpool he raised his palm. The originally turbulent square became even more majestic with the addition of the elderly man's profound energy. The strong airflow kept rising and rolling. Rumble, 2 bursts of profound energy collided. The strong profound wave seemed as though it could destroy the heaven and earth. Yiqing Luo took a step back. A sly smile appeared on her devastatingly beautiful face. The elderly man's heart trembled. He thought to himself, "Not good." He was about to retreat. Yiqing Luo suddenly tightened her grip on the glower flame fan. Because of the power of the god relic, the thick profound energy covered the sky and earth as it pressed down. The elderly man had nowhere to escape to. He could only brace himself as he strengthened his profound energy to go against Yiqing Luo's strength. But how would the elderly man be a match for the god relic? He strengthened his profound energy even more. The profound energy released by Yiqing Luo was also gradually increasing. In an instant, the elderly man felt a stuffiness in his chest as a mouthful of blood spurted out. His body suddenly retreated a few steps. Losing the support of his profound energy, Yiqing Luo's god relic's power completely swallowed the elderly man. Smoke rose and blood splattered. After Yiqing Luo forcefully expended the god relic's power, she obviously felt something in her body was flowing away. The profound heart jade was also faintly burning hot. This was a reminder that she had used up too much of her strength. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, trying her best to slow down the restlessness in her body. She narrowed her eyes and stared unblinkingly in the direction of the old man. Hopefully, someone who could deal with the people of this realm. The rest could be left to the royal army and the other factions. As long as there was no help from the people of the Earth domain, the current dark forces could not cause any trouble at all. Just as Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief, suddenly, a ray of silver light flashed past. Soon after, a 2-meter-long blade appeared in front of the old man who had been devoured by the power of the god artifact. The huge saber glowed with silver light and contained boundless power. Even Yiqing Luo was shocked by that ray of silver light as she took a few steps back. The aura of the divine tool's power dissipated in an instant. The old man fell in front of the saber, his face full of shock and fear. He seemed to be experiencing extreme pain and despair. On his body, the robes had already turned into strips of ragged cloth under the impact of the profound energy. He was covered in blood. It was impossible to tell if it was his blood. Or was it the ground which was stained with his blood? The old man took some time before he reacted. Following that, his eyes stared deadly at that huge saber. A loud dong sound was heard. The old man trembled all over as he knelt down towards that huge saber. Chapter 2015. Everyone. Yiqing Luo. What kind of situation was this? That insolent old man who came down from the upper realm actually knelt down and kowtowed to a huge blade? What was the background of this huge blade? Say, sir. The old man's voice trembled as his face turned ashen. He kowtowed so hard that his forehead turned red. Sir? Yi Qing Luo's expression congealed. Could it be the sir that Wolf Saint Law was waiting for? The sir who could make the old man from the Earth realm so fearful? Could it be that he was a reputable person in the Earth realm? Wolf Saint Law had found such a strong external aid. So after seeing 2/3 of the people from the dark forces dead, he was still able to remain calm? Everyone was still looking at the old man in a daze. When Wolf Saint Law heard the old man's call, his face instantly revealed an ecstatic expression. He took 2 quick steps forward as he stared at that huge blade agitatedly. You see, are you that useless? A chilly voice came from afar. Immediately following that, Yi Qing Luo felt an extremely icy cold aura coming towards her. On the side of that huge blade stood a tall and straight man dressed in a black robe. The old man raised his head in shock as he looked at the man and spoke in fear. I know I'm wrong. The man's entire body was emitting an unapproachable aura. He merely glanced at the old man indifferently, causing the old man's begging words to be stuck in his throat. Sir, you're finally here. When Wolf Saint Law saw the figure clearly, his brows were raised in joy as he took quick steps forward to welcome him. But the man's sleeves moved. A shapeless airflow blocked Wolf Saint Law's footsteps. He glanced coldly at Wolf Saint Law as he spoke coldly. This is just a deal between us, there's no need to play any relations with me. Wolf Saint Law stood awkwardly on the spot. His expression sunk slightly, but he still tried his best to put on a smiling face. Yes, then I'll have to trouble you. The man turned his head around coldly as his gaze swept coldly towards the old man. The old man shuddered as his head banged heavily onto the ground, not daring to make a sound. The sir. Yi Qing Luo stared at the man's face and was slightly stunned. That face. Wasn't he the person who appeared in the martial god formation when Netherworld used the Nether Mirror? Colt. This Yuhan was the lord who cooperated with Wolf's sacred technique? If her memory served her right. Behind Yuhan, there was a person known as Venerable One. He cooperated with the Wolf Saint Law. Was it Yuhan's intention or the Venerable One's? They were all from the Earth domain? Then, was the Netherworld also someone from the Earth domain? Yuhan also sensed Yi Qing Luo's attentive gaze. His vision fell onto Yi Qing Luo. That gaze made Yi Qing Luo shiver inexplicably. Yi Qing Luo. He accurately called out Yi Qing Luo's name as he stared at her face for some time. West Continent, I'll get it on behalf of Wolf Saint Technique. His tone was calm and cold. He wasn't spouting nonsense. It was just stating a fact. The unanimous opinion was like an ice house, attacking her whole body. Her body seemed to be frozen. Yi Qing Luo frowned. Before they even crossed hands, Yi Qing Luo had already clearly felt Yuhan's powerful ability. Thinking of Netherworld? They were from the same place and it was obvious that their abilities were on par with Yuhan. If Yuhan were to cross hands with her. Chapter 2016. Yi Qing Luo was filled with apprehension and uneasiness. The crowd couldn't tell. When Yuhan called out Yi Qing Luo's name, other than shock, there was only shock in everyone's heart. Other than astonishment, there was only astonishment. The people from the upper realm all knew Yi Qing Luo? That was the external help that Wolf Saint Technique had invited. Knew Yi Qing Luo? Yi Qing Luo's genius reputation had spread all the way to the upper realm? One must know that the old man had already given them a huge shock. That old man was extremely respectful towards Yuhan, and even had that fearful look. It was enough to tell that Yuhan's status and ability were above the old man. Yuhan knew Yi Qing Luo. The strong cultivators from the upper realm knew Yi Qing Luo. What kind of concept was this? As for the matter of Yuhan knowing her name, Yi Qing Luo wasn't surprised at all. Ever since the godless array came out, the Netherworld disappeared alone. You would definitely look for Yuhan and you knew. And through Yu Ming, it wasn't strange that Yuhan knew her name. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were calm as her lips curled slightly. Mr. Yuhan is rather confident in yourself. Yuhan raised her brows. You know me? Through Yu Ming, naturally. Yi Qing Luo replied. So it's that waste, no wonder a waste like you would know him. Yuhan's lips twitched coldly when he heard that. Looks like in Mr. Yuhan's eyes, other than yourself, everyone else is a waste. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but ridicule when she heard Yuhan's words. This wasn't the first time she heard Yuhan say the word waste. It was extremely ear-piercing. In my eyes, all of you are indeed waste. Yuhan didn't bother about Yi Qing Luo's ridicule as he arrogantly raised his head and sneered as he gave her a scornful glance. Even if you want to bring this bunch of waste and leave the West Continent, I have no intention to let any of you off. Everyone must die here, using your fresh blood to celebrate the new birth of the West Continent. Yuhan's voice paused after every word. The pressure from the machine made it difficult for the people around him to breathe just by hearing his voice. From this, one could see how majestic his aura was. What a pity, Yuhan, I'm afraid that your plan to let the West Continent be reborn will never be able to be realized. Yi Qingluo clenched her 5 fingers tightly as her lips curled into a sinister smile. She did not waste any more time talking to Yuhan. Now, the power of the divine artifact still lingered in her body. If Yuhan insisted on fighting with her, then he had to hurry up. Yi Qingluo's attack, following her words, had already struck towards Yuhan. Yuhan stretched out her arm. The silver broadsword that was stabbed into the ground suddenly rushed into his palm. He brandished his sword a few times in a fancy way. Without any hesitation, he welcomed Yi Qingluo's attack. The silver broadsword flickered with silver light, looking extremely majestic and terrifying. The two of them quickly intertwined. After exchanging about 20 moves, the disparity between the two of them became clearer. Even if he possessed the power of a divine artifact, he was gradually at a disadvantage under Yuhan's relentless attacks and the consumption of his profound energy. The scorching feeling of the profound jade heart within her body had already caused her chest to faintly feel somewhat uncomfortable. Forcefully expending the power of the divine artifact for the second time, as well as exceeding her load. And after the battle with Yuhan, Yi Qingluo felt more and more powerless. Only she could vaguely feel an invisible energy in her body, merging into her blood, faintly boiling. Star. Chapter 2017. What was this power? Yi Qingluo frowned as she raised her hand to press on her chest. The temperature from her palm was different from her body temperature. Profound jade heart. Couldn't hold on any longer. Yi Qingluo looked not too far away with an icy cold face. After these tens of moves, Yuhan didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. How powerful was Yuhan's power? She exhausted the power of the divine relic and was unable to hurt Yuhan at all? Yi Qingluo's breathing became hurried. She could feel the temperature in her palm gradually rising. This was the warning from the profound jade heart. Without the tranquility bead, her profound jade heart couldn't be maintained. The second release of the divine relic's power had completely overloaded Yi Qingluo's body. Yi Qingluo's eyes gradually revealed a trace of blood-red color. Extremely flirtatious. Yuhan's gaze suddenly turned cold. His vision was fixed on Yi Qingluo's blood-red eyes. The blood-red eyes made her look even more devastatingly beautiful. This blood-red color. Why did it feel a little strange? Yuhan's heart inexplicably raised an uneasy premonition. His eyes turned cold. He had to end this quickly. This young lady called Yi Qingluo had created too many miracles. He absolutely couldn't allow anyone or anything to escape his control. As long as he could nip all the sprouts in the cradle before the miracle happened, that would do. The broadsword in Yuhan's hand spun one round in midair. Only to hear a loud rumble, the profound light appeared and exploded in all directions. The profound chi was like a spider web, densely enveloping Yi Qingluo in it. However, the young lady in the profound light. He suddenly raised his head. A pair of blood-red pupils were extremely conspicuous in the profound light. What made Yuhan even more shocked was Yi Qingluo's eyes were filled with a sinister coldness, as if even the air had condensed into frost. A gush of red strong airflow revolved around Yi Qingluo's body, gradually forming a huge whirlpool. The flirtatious red light looked extremely strange. Her body gradually floated above the whirlpool. She was dressed in a blood-red robe like a blooming rose. She spread her fingers. The glowing flame fan was like a blazing flame, dancing in her palm. Yuhan's throat tightened, somehow feeling that the current Yi Qingluo had changed her temperament in an instant. This change made his heart palpitate. Yi Qingluo's lips slowly curled upwards as the corners of her lips curled upwards, revealing a sliver of chilliness. She took a slow step forward. Step by step he walked extremely slowly. But with every step she took, it was as if she was stepping on a whirlpool. She was like a goddess on the battlefield. It made one's heart tremble as they looked up at her. "You want to take my life?" Her sweet voice was laced with a hint of coldness. It was like a chilling frost. Yuhan's face darkened and she was about to retreat. The next moment, Yi Qingluo raised her arm and triggered the whirlpool, blocking in front of Yuhan. "Now I want to take your life." The red-clothed girl with blood-red eyes looked like a bloodthirsty war god. With a flick of her fingers, silver threads shot out. If one looked closely, one could clearly see that every silver thread was lingering with a faint red glow. Ah! A miserable scream was heard. Yuhan's body was bound by the silver threads. Fresh blood spurted out. Suddenly Yuhan's body was hung up in mid-air by the silver threads. Hee hee hee. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. Her enchanting face was extremely bewitching. This imposing manner, not Yiqing Luo. This was absolutely not the Yiqing Luo who was exhausted by the divine relic. Star. Chapter 2018. Yuhan could clearly feel that Yiqing Luo's entire body was emitting a strange aura from her bones. The sharp silver threads were like sharp blades, incessantly cutting his body, as though they were embedded into his bones. Sir. The elderly looked at Yuhan, but before he could make a move, he was subdued by Yiqing Luo. He was stunned on the spot. Wolf Saint Magic's face had already sunk. This Yuhan was actually so weak. She hadn't even touched the corner of Yiqing Luo's clothes, and was tortured by her directly? Not even comparable to her own subordinates? With this kind of ability she dared to cooperate with her? Wolf Saint Magic's expression was unfathomable. His gaze towards Yuhan was extremely chilly. Old Wolf, don't tell me. This is your trump card? Butterfly Saint Magic, who had long hidden behind Wolf Saint Magic, asked cautiously. Wolf Saint Magic didn't respond for a long time. Which meant this was indeed Wolf Saint Magic's so-called trump card. The top exponents from the Earth domain were the powerful external reinforcements that Wolf Saint Magic had invited. This is your trump card? A sharp and unkind voice was heard. This kind of trash that Yiqing Luo easily played with is your trump card? The person who said this was obviously the one who had always been at odds with Wolf Saint Magic, Pharaoh He. His face was filled with ridicule as he sneered. I thought you really had some incredible trump card to point your fingers at us and act so arrogantly. Did you really think that after his lordship went into hibernation you're the boss? Pharaoh He. Wolf Saint Magic squinted his sinister cold eyes, reflecting a piercingly cold glint. If my trump card is useless against Yiqing Luo, then all of us will die. Are you sure you can still continue to laugh? Pharaoh He's ridiculing expression froze. Butterfly Saint Magic tugged his arm and looked at Wolf Saint Magic. Old Wolf, did you notice Yiqing Luo's sudden change? Wolf Saint Magic's sinister gaze swept past Pharaoh He coldly. Finally back to Butterfly Saint Magic. Change? He raised his eyes and looked at the young lady who was floating above the red whirlpool. His pair of eyes seemed to be dyed red by that red glow. Indeed, Yiqing Luo's sudden change had no signs at all. Even when the divine artifact's power was depleted, Yiqing Luo had never experienced such an intense change. Furthermore, Yiqing Luo seemed to have changed into another person. On this side, the few of them were full of doubts. Yuhan panted heavily and groaned in pain. Yiqing Luo had no intention to kill him directly. Instead, he used the silver threads in the gourd flame fan to torture his limbs. A bone-piercing pain assaulted him. Yuhan shuddered. He suddenly understood. Yiqing Luo was planning to cripple his limbs? Want to turn him into a cripple? Yuhan's heart tightened as her vicious gaze stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. His eyes flashed with extreme unwillingness and anger. What? Not satisfied? Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her smile was extremely enchanting. His blood-red pupils were like a blossoming poppy. The Western continent is a place that I want to protect. These people are the people I want to protect. If you want to invade our territory, then you should bring out your strength. If you don't have enough strength, then you don't have the capital to run down to the lower realms and be arrogant and despotic. Yuhan's expression turned gloomy. His body tensed up, causing the few silver threads that were restraining him to cut deeper into his bones. The heart-wrenching pain made even a man unable to endure it as he groaned. Star. Chapter 2019. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she raised her arms slightly. Her fair and slender fingers were encircled by a circle of red profound glow. Just like that, she gently pointed towards Yuhan's direction. Containing the power of the ocean, it set off numerous airflows. Yuhan was entangled by the silver threads and had no way to avoid this attack. A demonic red glow filled Yuhan's pupils. At this moment he clearly saw. A burst of intense profound rays shot out from Yiqing Luo's chest. His pupils grew bigger and bigger. That red glow which enveloped Yi Qing Luo's entire body was overflowing from her chest. No, not her chest, but profound jade heart. This was the reason for Yi Qing Luo's sudden change? Not giving Yuhan much time to think, the red glow which encircled like a whirlpool, covered the sky and earth as it pressed downwards. The young lady's alluring smile was fixed in Yuhan's eyes. The red profound glow merged with the sky full of blood rain. In front of Yuhan, it was a patch of blood color. Just as everyone thought Yuhan was dead for sure. Lightning flashed and thunder roared in the sky, as the electric current seemed to tear a huge hole in the sky. A ray of golden profound glow descended from the sky, directly landing on that strong whirlpool which Yi Qing Luo had set off. The golden light turned into a huge shield, enveloping Yuhan in it. The golden light and the red whirlpool blended together. The whirlpool continued to increase the strength and speed of its rotation. But there was no way to break that shield. The surrounding winds and clouds surged as everything seemed to be covered by those two huge forces. Even the old and young of the Mu family who were supporting the barrier, under the raging waves, were on the verge of collapsing, unable to support the barrier. But the thought that if the barrier which they had set up was broken, all the commoners and people from the major forces within the barrier would die in these profound waves. Thinking of this, the old and young of the Mu family were still holding on to their last breath, maintaining the barrier. Black clouds filled the entire sky as dark as night. Only that ray of golden light tore open a huge hole, as though it had opened its bloody mouth, wanting to swallow everything in the lower realm. The terrifying and valiant Qi made everyone's breathing felt extremely oppressed. Yi Qing Luo opened her arms wide, the red vortex of air current lingered around her body, as if she was wearing a blazing dress, light as a feather. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Her blood-colored pupils were overflowing with color, and the golden shield in front of her faintly gave her a golden glow. The corners of her lips curled up devilishly, and there was an enchanting coldness in her eyes. Her slender fingers gripped the glowing flame fan tightly, and suddenly danced. An increasingly powerful profound energy burst forth from her body. Her chest was burning like a raging fire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the devouring flame fan opened, and the silver threads that were dyed red shot out like flowers scattered by a goddess. The silver threads enveloped the golden barrier. Following that, Yi Qing Luo's fingers tightened. The silver threads tightened as well. However, in the next instant, the energy shield flashed brightly. Kacha! The sound of silver threads snapping could be heard. The silver threads wrapping around the energy shield were completely severed. When the crowd saw the silver threads snapping, they all drew in a breath of cold air, as they let out a fearful voice. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows raised as she stared at that energy shield with interest. She casually cut off the connection between the silver threads and the glowing flame fan. She closed the glowing flame fan. Her pink lips curled up into a faintly discernible cold arc. Since you appear to protect this ignorant person, why not directly show yourself? A clear voice leisurely rang. Chapter 2020. There were still helpers. Everyone in the array barrier immediately looked around. What capital did the dark forces have to be able to invite such powerful helpers? 2 people from the upper realm. Now, there was another person who was even more powerful than the 2 of them. West Continent was really going to be invaded? Everyone's hearts were extremely restless. Pairs of anxious and hopeful gazes looked towards Yi Qing Luo. If Yi Qing Luo wasn't a match for those people, then what should they do? Unknowingly, everyone had unknowingly placed all their hopes on Yi Qing Luo. His gaze was placed on that girl who was only 15 years old. This was the charm of character and ability. It had nothing to do with age. It had nothing to do with gender. Yi Qing Luo raised her head as she gazed at the sky, at that golden hole which was torn. Just at this moment, the air in the sky fluctuated and suddenly turned into an extremely intense whirlpool shape. Suddenly the hole split open again. A mass of black figures floated out from the torn hole. That black mass of figures gradually got nearer. Nearer. Obviously they were separated by a distance of heaven and earth. However, the black mass of figures was approaching at an extremely fast speed. In a blink of an eye they had already stopped at the side of the shield. The entire West Continent public square fell into a dead silence. That was... Under the dazzling light, a team of 30 people could be seen. They were dressed in silver armors and formed a half-encirclement as they came over in a grandiose manner. Under the bright sun, rays of light blossomed behind their backs, as though they were plated with a layer of battle armor. Disdainful stance, vast might, was displayed incisively and vividly in their actions. At the same time, an extreme pressure suddenly exploded from their bodies. That was a pressure that was born from their bones. Everyone felt as if their hearts were suddenly pressed down by 1,000-pound boulder, and their breathing suddenly became irregular. Some of the weaker ones were even forced to crawl on the ground by this pressure. They were so shocked that their eyes were wide open, and they didn't dare to look straight at him. Terror. Other than terror, there was only terror. Who were these people? How could they have such a powerful, imposing manner? The leader's gaze swept past the public square indifferently, as though he was looking at an ant, as his gaze finally stopped on Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she exchanged glances with that person. "Oh no, little girl." Old Man Song's voice suddenly entered his mind. They are the historiographers who maintain the balance of all realms and planes. Historian? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she narrowed her long and narrow eyes. The power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade is too strong. It has exceeded the balance of the lower realm. No wonder the historian of peace interfered in this matter, Old Man Song continued. Yiqing Luo gave a low laugh. She raised her eyebrows and her eyes were filled with ridicule. "So, old man, are you blaming me?" Old Man Song remained silent. It was a tacit agreement. Yiqing Luo laughed even more wantonly. Her slender fingers curled up a wisp of hair and twined it around her fingertip. Her entire person was extremely enchanting and charming. "If it wasn't for me, all of you would have died here today. You should be thanking me." Old Man Song didn't reply and changed the topic. "That girl's body is still very weak. Before you obtain the heart-calming bead, if you want to destroy that girl, then go ahead and find trouble for her." Yiqing Luo's smile froze. His blood-red eyes flickered slightly. Star. Chapter 2021. The official in charge had an upright and plain-spoken expression, as he was extremely solemn. He looked at Yiqing Luo expressionlessly as his voice was icy cold. "Yiqing Luo, you're from Nirvana realm, your profound grade cannot exceed the burden of Nirvana realm." Yiqing Luo lowered her head as she didn't say a single word. The official in charge frowned as his imposing manner and prestige, unknowingly increased by a few notches. "Yiqing Luo, this official is speaking to you. How dare you ignore me?" The crowd looked at each other in dismay. No matter if it was the royal family army or the dark forces, they were all stunned by this 30-man team. This team, which side were they helping? The powerful, imposing manner on them apparently. As compared to those two people from the upper realm, they were much stronger. That lass's imposing manner. Her imposing manner. Suddenly Mu Xiao stared at Yiqing Luo as his old face turned shocked. After he said that, he realized something as he immediately shut his mouth, as his white brows creased tightly as he looked towards Mu Lai. Mu Lai nodded as his expression was extremely grave. However, even if Mu Xiao managed to stop his voice in time, there were still many people among the crowd as they heard what Mu Xiao said. Instantly, everyone's attention shifted from those 30 people onto Yiqing Luo. This look made everyone's guts broken. That red whirlpool beneath Yiqing Luo's feet slowly dissipated. Her body slowly descended from midair as it landed onto the ground. Her entire body at this instance no longer had the initial arrogance and wanton. Like the inflated balloon was lightly pricked by someone. Instantly it went blank. What was wrong with Yiqing Luo? Why did she suddenly lose her battle-imposing manner? If Yiqing Luo admitted defeat, then all of them wouldn't. Yiqing Luo. The official standing behind the official in charge walked out of the team in quick steps. He raised his hand as he tugged Yiqing Luo's shoulder as his voice was extremely dignified. "Since you're so uncooperative, then based on the strange energy on your body, I'll bring you back to Balance Prison and interrogate you severely." An unstoppable clear laughter broke the oppressive atmosphere at this moment. The young lady who had her head lowered, slowly raised it. At the same time, just as the official stretched out his hand to touch her, her footsteps moved slightly. Her figure had already flashed as she was just 5 steps away from the official. "You." The scribe's expression was sullen, unable to believe that he actually allowed a little girl from the lower realms to avoid his hand. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched in disdain. Her eyes as she stared fixedly at the official. At this moment, the red whirlpool around her as she stared at the official. By now, as the red whirlpool had completely disappeared. A hint of mockery appeared on her beautiful face. Her voice was clear and sweet, but the words she spat out were extremely sharp. What does the burden have to do with me? Qing as he Luo he said. Yi Qing Luo smiled again and pointed at the wolf saint technique, then turned around and pointed at the shield by the side. Isn't it the balance historian? Then, when the dark forces used the Nirvana realm to invade the Western continent and take control of the Nirvana realm, why didn't you, the balance historian, show yourself? Yi Qing Luo's face sunk as her cold eyes revealed a sliver of chilliness. Yi Qing Luo was fearless as she laughed in ridicule. Don't put on an awe-inspiring righteous look in front of me. You can't even settle the matter before me, so what right do you have to accuse me of destroying the balance? Star. Chapter 2022. That historian's face turned steely green. Perhaps he had never seen such a rude person from the lower realms. As balance historians, they shuttled through various realms and planes. No matter who it was, they would be respectful to them. But Yi Qing Luo was so daring. The historian clenched his teeth as he stretched out his hand and grabbed towards Yi Qing Luo. Step down. The deep voice was calm and indifferent. It also stopped that historian's action. The head historian's expression was calm as he looked at Yi Qing Luo coldly. Balance historians are not omnipotent. It's not possible to keep an eye on the changes and everything in the world at all times. He explained. Moreover, even if the balance historians found out about the dark forces, they need to report it to the upper realm before they can take any further action. The upper realm already knows about this matter. What the dark forces will do next is the upper realm's matter. What we can do is to try our best to prevent the imbalance from happening, that's all. He was really pushing the blame away cleanly. Yi Qing Luo looked at them with a smile which didn't look like a smile, as her smile became more and more ridiculing. In this way, even if the dark forces really invaded the West continent, the upper realm didn't take any action, so they don't intend to bother about this matter? Allowing the dark forces to collude with the people from the Earth realm to control Nirvana realm, making the people of the lower realms unable to live? And then, after all these happened, using a dignified reason to do something on the surface, to cover up all the ugliness? Yi Qing Luo was extremely incisive. Every word, sharp and incisive, simply piercing their hearts. The historian's expression turned gloomy. Even if they were expressionless, the head historian's face also turned black. But they couldn't refute. They had to admit that what Yi Qing Luo said was indeed so. The atmosphere froze for a moment. The head historian continued, everything in the world is controlled by fate. If the West Continent can't escape this calamity, then it will be the West Continent's calamity. This doesn't mean that you can violate the balance of the lower realms, using energy that doesn't belong to the lower realms to kill people. This person is not someone from the lower realms. Yi Qing Luo sneered. No matter if he's from the lower realms or not, the energy you use has affected the balance of Nirvana realm. The head historian's gaze suddenly turned biting cold. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly. They couldn't even protect the peace of the lower realm. There was no need to talk about balance. These people knew that the dark forces were colluding with the people of the land and doing things that violated the balance of the Nirvana realm. However, he still held on to her tightly and refused to let go. He didn't care about the dark faction or the Earth realm old man at all. Could it be that they did not violate the balance of the Nirvana realm? Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered to waste her breath on these historians. She looked at them and said, now I will give you two choices. First, go back to where you came from. Second, take this group of people and go back to where you came from. As she spoke, she pointed at the sacred wolf technique and the energy barrier. After a pause, she laughed even more wildly. Of course, I suggest you to choose the second option. How about this? When I know the consequences of the dark forces and the few people from the upper realm who smuggled themselves into the Nirvana realm, maybe I will take the initiative to turn myself in. The head historian took a deep look at Yi Qing Luo. Then he looked in the direction of the dark forces and the old man from the Earth realm. A chill ran down Wolf St. Law's spine. He naturally recognized the origins of these people. Star. Chapter 2023. The reason why the Wolf St. Law dared to appear in the Western continent and invade the Western continent was because of the Wolf St. Law. This was because he believed that these so-called heavenly path historians would never be able to discover the existence of the dark forces. But unexpectedly, Yi Qing Luo's profound energy which had exceeded the limits of Nirvana realm attracted the Heavenly Ways historian. Earlier Yi Qing Luo had easily entangled Yuhan in the silver thread, not giving Yuhan any chance to move or counterattack at all. Where did such a powerful force come from? Wolf's sacred law knew Yuhan's true strength too well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so. On the other side, the Earth Realm old man's face was pale as he stared at the 30 scribes in a daze. His stomach was filled with terror. They violated the Treaty of Equilibrium, quietly descended to the lower realms, and fought with the people of the lower realms. If these historians brought them back to their own place, they would not be able to do anything to them. Even if he didn't die, he would lose half his life. Since I, the scribe, have discovered this matter, I will naturally resolve it, the chief scribe said calmly. Right now the most important problem is your secret. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flickered with a complicated look. In the blink of an eye it disappeared. His eyes were filled with arrogance and willfulness from before. She smiled and said, No. You may have misunderstood me. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. A warm, profound light enveloped her palm. That light was extremely bright. The chief scribe casually glanced at it, and then a look of surprise appeared on his face. Yi Qing Luo, profound grade. Sky profound first grade. Profound sky? Only a sky Xian? How could this be? The head historian recalled the scene earlier, when Yi Qing Luo's flames suddenly dissipated. His expression froze. Suddenly his body moved and he appeared right in front of Yi Qing Luo. The leading scribe was extremely fast. Yi Qing Luo was totally unable to react in time. His wrist was firmly grabbed by the head scribe. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased. Sir Recorder, are you intending to use force to bully a weak lady like me? The leading scribe remained silent. A scorching dark force emerged from his palm. In an instant, it was transmitted from Yi Qing Luo's wrist into her meridians. Yi Qing Luo instinctively wanted to resist. However, the hand that was gripping her wrist was so strong that she couldn't break free at all. She could only allow the chief scribe to search for the dark force in her body. It was as if he wanted to confirm exactly what level her true strength was at. The audience was silent. Everyone's gazes were anxiously concentrated on Yi Qing Luo and the head historian. No one from the Dark Coalition dared to move either. The 30 scribes were simply too shocked. Right at that moment, the leading scribe's expression grew even more complicated. From the initial shock to the later shock, and finally the gaze which he shot at Yi Qing Luo, revealed a sliver of disbelief. Can you let go now? Yi Qing Luo asked unhappily. The leading scribe was stunned. He was actually extremely obedient, moving his hand away. His gaze was fixed on Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Yi Qing Luo retracted her hand and took out a handkerchief to wipe her wrist where the head historian had grabbed it. Her long and narrow eyes were slightly raised, and her eyes were full of mockery. Are you sure now? Yes. The head historian replied in a daze, as though he had not regained his senses from the earlier shock. Sir Librarian. The scribe behind him went forward with a steely green face. Is she really a sky profound cultivator? The head historian was still looking at Yi Qing Luo, and after some time he spat out a word, yes. Star. Chapter 2024. How could this be possible? If she's in the sky profound grade that power earlier. The historian was in disbelief. The leader's face sunk as he suddenly turned around and looked at the team of historians behind him. All of you, capture all these people who sneaked into the lower realm and the people from the dark forces. The moment he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. The royal army and the commoners cheered. On the other hand, the dark forces were terrified. The 3 holy techniques and 4 pharaohs' faces were ashen as they stared at Wolf Saint Fa resentfully. That historian was stunned. Lord Librarian, this is not possible. We obviously sensed the change in her profound grade. She definitely has an unspeakable secret on her. For the peace of Nirvana realm, we must capture her back. Shut up. The leader of the historians berated in a low voice as he carefully looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. This glance made that historian's heart tremble. He targeted Yi Qing Luo because he felt that this 15-year-old young lady was too arrogant and insolent. Not giving Yi Qing Luo a taste of her own medicine. This young lady was probably even more unreasonable. But Lord Librarian's gaze and the shocked expression earlier. Apparently, Lord Librarian was afraid of this 15-year-old young lady. The historian immediately shut his mouth and didn't say another word. Instead, he followed his orders and along with the other historians, they charged towards the elderly from the Earth realm and the dark forces. For a moment, the entire public square was in chaos. The people from the dark forces kept fleeing in all directions. But how could their speed match up to the balanced historians who came from the Heaven Dao space? The leader of the historians stood among the crowd. That pair of icy cold dignified gaze had been fixated on Yiqing Luo without blinking, as though he was deep in thought about something. Wolf Saint Fa, who was standing far away, saw this scene. His face was sinister and extremely terrifying. He clenched his fists tightly as he gritted his teeth while looking at Yiqing Luo. The young lady crossed her arms in a leisurely manner as she looked at the people from the dark forces being captured by the historians with a smile which didn't look like a smile. The anger in Wolf Saint Fa's heart surged. Wolf Saint Fa. A weak and delicate voice was heard from behind him. Wolf Saint Fa turned his head around fiercely. Behind him, a disheveled woman dressed in blood-stained clothes walked over. Her entire body was covered in blood. Her meticulously dressed face was also covered in sticky blood. It looked very much like a walking zombie. Lang Xingfa frowned. Fei-er? The woman nodded happily, the blood on her body dripping down. Wolf Saint Technique, it's me. This lady wasn't anyone else, she was the scum whom Yiqing Luo had thrown out earlier, Yanjin Fei. When Yanjin Fei saw that Wolf Saint Technique recognized her, she smiled happily. However, the Wolf Sacred Technique could only see the blood flowing down her face. Wolf Xingfa frowned in disgust and was about to retreat to avoid Yanjin Fei's embrace. But he heard Yanjin Fei say, Wolf Saint Art, before we came, Father specially told me a way to escape from West Billow Square. Fei-er will take you there. The Wolf Saint Technique's footsteps halted. He suppressed the disgust in his heart and caught Yanjin Fei, who was covered in blood. Fei-er, is what you said true? Wolf Saint Technique asked. But we need to make use of others to attract their attention. I'm afraid we won't be able to match up to their speed. Yanjin Fei didn't notice the tightness in Wolf Saint Technique's body as she said softly, Star. Chapter 2025. In Yanjin Fei's opinion. This time, the Yin family had joined the Dark Coalition's camp. It also meant that the Yin family and the Dark Coalition would live and die together. The Wolf Saint Technique was what she would rely on in the future. No matter what, she had to hug the Wolf Saint Technique's thigh tightly. As long as the Wolf Saint Law was still alive, they would have a chance to make a comeback. And at that time, she, who had always been by Wolf Saint Fa's side, was definitely the greatest contributor. The Wolf Saint Technique's eyes flashed as he looked at the woman in his arms. His 5 fingers moved, and in the end he still pointed to the side at the few pharaohs who were preparing to execute dark secret arts and escape. The 4 pharaohs huddled together and quickly chanted an incantation. It was obvious that the 4 of them were planning to escape from this place. The Wolf Saint Law's eyes turned cold. Just as the curse was about to form, he suddenly hugged Yanjin Fei, his body flashing as he charged beside the 4 pharaohs. He reached out and grabbed the shoulder of one of the pharaohs and threw him in the direction of the scribe. The other 3 pharaohs had yet to react. A stream of black mysterious yin qi shrouded down. The 3 pharaohs, Wolf Saint Art, and Yanjin Fei disappeared in the profound yin qi. A few scribes realized the pharaoh's curse and rushed over to stop it. However, a person was thrown in front of them, smashing into them and stopping them in their tracks. By the time they had tied up the pharaoh that had been thrown out, the Wolf Saint Technique and the other 3 pharaohs had already disappeared. Lord Scribe have escaped, the scribe reported to the scribe. The librarian retracted his gaze from Yiqing Luo and squinted his cold eyes. If the news of us appearing in the lower realm were to spread, and 4 of us escaped, it would cause panic in the Nirvana realm. Of all the realms, this was the lowest of the lower realms. Once the news of the heavenly way reached the ears of those ordinary people from the lower realms, it would definitely cause them to feel uneasy. Especially when he knew that 4 people had escaped and had not been caught by the court historian. The people in the lower realms would all live in fear and trepidation. At that time, it would also affect the balanced development of the Nirvana realm. This subordinate knows his mistake. The scribes immediately knelt down. What's the use of knowing your sins? Hurry up and capture him. The scribe shouted. The scribes looked at each other in dismay, their faces full of difficulty. They used the dark secret technique. As for where they went, this subordinate does not know. The historiographer's expression instantly became ruthless. Just as he was about to fly into a rage, a sweet voice drifted over, I have already placed the soul-chasing powder on their bodies. As long as you follow the soul-chasing powder, you will be able to find their whereabouts within 3 days. Her voice paused for a moment before she laughed mockingly. Of course, if you can't find them within 3 days with the help of the soul-chasing powder, then there's nothing I can do. The historiographer and librarian's gazes fell onto Yiqing Luo. Looking at Yiqing Luo's face, it was filled with contempt. The scribes' faces sank. But this matter was indeed their negligence, so they couldn't refute it. In particular, in the end, they still needed to rely on this 15-year-old girl to hunt down the 4 people who had escaped. Yi Fengru, who was entangled with Nangong Firen by the side, suddenly froze when he heard Yiqing Luo's words. Soul-chasing powder? Yiqing Luo actually had the soul-chasing powder? This was the soul-chasing powder which he had once used on Yiqing Luo in order to track her. Only a dark medicine master was able to refine the soul-chasing powder. Yiqing Luo had only touched it once, and she knew how to refine it. Chapter 2026. Moreover, when did she use the soul-chasing powder on Wuxia technique and the other pharaohs? Wuxia technique and the rest actually didn't notice it? Just when Yi Fengru wasn't paying attention, he was forcefully pressed onto the ground by Nangong Firen. Nangong Firen took out a bundle of rope from his realm ring and tied Yi Fengru up tightly. Just as he was tied up, Nangong Lin broke free from Wei Bailey's restraint and rushed to Yi Fengru's side. Brother Ru, are you alright? Yi Fengru didn't even look at her but stared fiercely at Nangong Firen. Let me go. Have a good rest. I'll let you go after you've calmed down. Nangong Firen pressed his forehead tiredly. Pausing, he looked at Nangong Lin, whose face was filled with worry, and sighed helplessly. Ru, you should really take a good look at the person in front of you. Linner's feelings for you are sincere. Look at her, you've hurt me to such a state and she hasn't even expressed a single word of concern. She's only thinking about you. Don't let your feelings cloud your heart. Yi Fengru didn't say a word as the viciousness on his face didn't dissipate for a long time. The situation in the public square turned around very quickly. Those few Wuxia techniques and those pharaohs who were thrown out were also restrained by the court officials. Apart from the dark forces, the small forces of the Nirvana realm, such as the Yen clan and the Shangguan clan, were forced to kneel on the ground by the pressure released by the scribes. Mu families old and young released the barrier. The commoners cheered excitedly as they shouted Yiqing Luo's name and praised the court officials. To be able to protect their own homes and survive. To them, this was the most beautiful thing. Those small families who joined the dark forces because of the temptation of the dark forces kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. None of them had expected this. In a short span of 1 hour, there was actually such an earth-shattering change. Originally they thought that the powerful external assistance and trump card that Wuxia technique had invited would allow them to obtain the final victory. It would allow them to obtain the West continent. But this so-called external assistance couldn't even compare to a finger of Yiqing Luo's. Annoyance and remorse filled his heart. Whereas those from Three Springs sect who admitted defeat heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, in the end they chose to be loyal to the Three Springs sect and not Yi Fengru. Otherwise, they would really become rebels and traitors recorded in the historical records. Furthermore, it would cause the Three Springs sect to be cursed. After settling everything, the historian counted the number of people and immediately looked towards Yiqing Luo. These stowaways and dark forces, I will inform the upper realm and punish them. Before he could finish his words, Yiqing Luo took a step forward. The distance between the two of them closed. He was only 1 step away. Yiqing Luo bent over slightly and leaned close to his ear, using a voice that only the two of them could hear. No matter what you saw on me regarding my matters, I hope that you can keep it a secret. The scribe was startled. Yiqing Luo had already retreated a few steps, pulling a distance away from him. She smiled at him and said, Then I'll have to trouble Lord Historiographer to make a trip today. The common people of the West continent will certainly remember the actions of the historiographer in their hearts. The commoners immediately agreed and expressed their gratitude. Some of them even knelt down. This was the first time the scribes had encountered such a situation. For a moment they were all stunned on the spot. Looking at those passionate commoners, they were at a loss on what to do. The icy cold face of the scribe faintly revealed a trace of embarrassment. Start out your tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.